Chapter 1. The autumn wind was bleak, bringing with it a hint of coolness. Accompanied by the sound of the wind, a light drizzle fell, landing on a semi-elliptical magnetic fortress that was suspended in mid-air. Looking through the tempered glass that was wet from the rain, the suspended magnetic fortress was filled with people. It was bustling with activity. Luo 1, 16 years old. Brain expanse 6. 89%, grade 7. Han Tiansheng, 16 years old. Brain expanse 7. 77%, grade 5. Ji Min, 17 years old. Brain expanse 7. 38%, grade 6. Wu Yingjun, 17 years old. Brain expanse 8. 13%, grade 4. Several dozens of young men lined up in a long line and were entering a giant cylindrical machine that was about 3.5 meters tall in an orderly manner. As a dark gold helmet descended and was placed on the tester's head, it instantly emitted a series of electromagnetic light. A row of clear numbers flashed on the screen in front of them as the instructor reported and recorded it with a pen. Heh, genius Lin Feng. Guess what grade you'll be this time? The one who spoke was a youth with a protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks. His tone was filled with mockery, and there was a hint of sarcasm in his smile. His voice wasn't loud, but it instantly caused a slight commotion. Which one of you is Lin Feng? So he is the legendary Lin Feng. I heard that he met with an accident 2 years ago, and his brain expanse decreased instead of increasing. Is that true? It's absolutely true. It's such a pity. Last year, when he was only 16 years old, his brain expanse had already reached 95%, and he was only a few steps away from the critical line. I heard that the top of the 3 high-grade genetic academies, Elite Crown Academy, had already offered him excellent conditions and recruited him in advance. However, that accident. Sigh, the heavens are toying with people. Rumors and slanders began to spread everywhere. Numerous gazes glanced over from time to time and landed on a handsome young man in the middle of the group. He had a head of short hair, a full forehead, and a pair of bright and spirited eyes that were filled with vitality. He was the main character at the center of the rumors, Lin Feng. Swish, a gleam flashed in his eyes, and Lin Feng's chest rose and fell slightly. Indeed, it was very painful. The pain wasn't from the accident, but from the heart. Everything had changed in a single night. He had gone from being the pride of the masses to falling to the bottom of the valley step by step. He had become the topic of conversation and the clown that everyone mocked and ridiculed. Until now, he could still clearly remember the expression of the vice principal of Crown Elite Academy when he saw the number on the mind expanse tester. What a joke! These 5 words, along with that disdainful and angry look and the figure of his back as he flicked his sleeves and left, had almost become a nightmare for him. But all of this was already in the past. These people are really gossipy. What's the point of gossiping about this and that? The one who spoke was a sturdy young man. He was courageous and powerful, and anger flashed between his brows. If it weren't for the fact that there was a strict rule against using force here, they would have already erupted. Lin Feng looked at the sturdy young man, warmth flowing through his heart. He was his only friend, Yang Li. Let them be, Ollie, Lin Feng said indifferently. I don't care anymore. Yang Li's eyebrows moved slightly, and he probed carefully. Really? Lin Feng smiled and said, of course it's true. A faint nostalgia flashed in his eyes. Lin Feng clenched his fist. When he could muster up the courage to step into this place again, without fear of all the gossip and ridicule, that would prove that he had truly walked out of the shadows. Pressing on his chest, Lin Feng closed his eyes and felt his undulating chest gradually calm down. He revealed a joyful smile. At this moment, he was certain that the layer of haze in his heart had finally dispersed. Great! Yang Li heaved a sigh of relief as though a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He smiled and said, I was so afraid that you often would sink and never recover. How could that be? Lin Feng smiled indifferently. His eyes flashed with a strong determination. My goal has never wavered. I want to become a true expert like Big Brother. Although my mind expanse has decreased over the past year, I didn't neglect my training because of this. Yang Li's lips twitched. You lunatic. I was afraid that you would go berserk from practicing the blade. Lin Feng's gaze was burning, and the veins on his fists were bulging. I'm just unwilling to accept this. Why is it that I've worked so hard and cultivated so much more than anyone else? Why did I end up with such an outcome? Yang Li sighed softly. He wanted to console Feng Xinjian, but hesitated. No one knew Lin Feng better than him. Others could only see his impressive talent and dazzling results, but they didn't know how much effort he had put in and how much blood and sweat he had shed. When he was young, Lin Feng's body was weak, and he was the smallest and skinniest one. However, since he was 6 years old, he had been working hard to train himself and temper his body. In the end, when he was selected to enter Jiayang District's Elementary Genetic Academy at the age of 12, Lin Feng's physical fitness index was already ranked first. Talent was valuable, but hard work was even more important. Yang Li still remembered that the other children his age had laughed at Lin Feng for being silly. But now, who was the silly one? It was a pity, Yang Li suddenly reacted and looked at Lin Feng doubtfully. He hesitated and said, Aren't your genes damaged? Often, how can you become a genetic warrior? Lin Feng smiled. To become a true expert, breaking through the boundary and becoming a genetic warrior isn't the only path. After saying that, Lin Feng patted Yang Li's shoulder lightly. Hey, it's your turn to be tested, Ollie. Yang Li was shocked when he heard that. There was indeed no one in front of him, so he quickly ran forward. Looking at Yang Li, Lin Feng's gaze landed on the brain expanse testing machine. He felt a little worried for him. There were still 3 months before the recruitment period for the 3 major advanced genetic academies. At that time, if the 18-year-old Yang Li's brain expanse couldn't even reach second class, then there wouldn't be any hope left. As for himself, when he was rejected by the elite Crown Academy a year ago, he had already lost all hope. Yang Li, 17 years old. Brain expanse 8. 85%. Third class. The instructor's voice was as cold as usual. Soft discussions could be heard from the surroundings. Third-class results were actually not bad. With a brain expanse 8, 85%, he was ranked 5th among all the youths who had completed the test. However, Yang Li, who had completed the test, was frowning. He wasn't happy. After letting out a deep breath, Lin Feng walked forward slowly. Entering this place after a year, he wasn't trying to prove anything. Instead, he was trying to be honest with himself like what his elder brother had said, or rather, to accept reality, even if this wasn't the reality he wanted. Zzz, as the electromagnetic light flashed, the numbers on the screen appeared clearly. Lin Feng, 17 years old. Brain expanse 5, 0%. 10 class. The instructor's voice was no longer cold. Instead, there was a hint of contempt, ridicule, and even disdain. To him, Lin Feng was a complete piece of trash. To the Elementary Genetic Academy of Jiayang District, Lin Feng was a great humiliation. 10 class. In the Elementary Genetic Academy of Jiayang District, even a 12-year-old student who had just enrolled was stronger than Lin Feng. Ha! Ha ha! Everyone burst into laughter. Many youths were laughing so hard that they were about to cry. He's really a genius. Right, a 10th class genius. Do you guys think that if his brain expanse continues to deteriorate, he will become an idiot? Haha, what are you laughing at? Only Yang Li was enraged. His face was ashen as he bellowed furiously. He swung his sandbag-sized fist, wanting to hit someone. However, Lin Feng grabbed his wrist. Let's go. There are only 3 months left. Don't leave behind a bad record. I'm not afraid. The muscles on Yang Li's arms swelled up like steel, and the veins on his forehead popped out. All right, Lin Feng said softly, feeling touched. He grabbed Yang Li's wrist and forcefully dragged him away. In terms of physical attributes, Lin Feng was number 1 when he had just entered the Elementary Genetic Academy of Jiayang District at the age of 12. 5 years later, he was still number 1 without a doubt. Hit him. Come and hit him if you're capable. That means that we can't even speak the truth in this day and age. Yang Li, if you continue to stick to this 10th class genius, don't blame us for not warning you when your brain expands degenerates. Ha ha. Accompanied by all sorts of mocking and unpleasant voices, Lin Feng forcefully pulled Yang Li away from the brain expanse testing center. I'm sorry, Often. I was too impulsive. The drizzle landed on Yang Li's face. In addition to the iron-like grip on his wrist, Yang Li gradually regained his clarity of mind. He lowered his head and said in embarrassment, "My bad temper almost implicated you." "What's the big deal about implicating me?" Lin Feng loosened his grip on Yang Li's right hand and said seriously, "It's a pity if you leave behind a bad record because of me. You're different from me. You still have hopes of entering the 3 high-grade genetic academies." "It's easier said than done." Yang Li smiled bitterly. "My brain expanse is now 85%. If I want to increase it to 9% within 3 months, the genetic fluid distributed by the academy isn't enough. Moreover, even if my brain expanse reaches 2nd class, I'll only be qualified to apply for the 3 high-grade genetic academies. Don't give up. There be a way." Lin Feng patted Yang Li's shoulder. "All right, I'll accept your words." Yang Li shrugged, clearly lacking in confidence. "I'll go back and discuss with my old man to see if there's a way to raise some money to buy the genetic fluid." Looking at Lin Feng, Yang Li revealed a carefree smile. "No matter what, it's worth it to see my good brother stand up again. Let's go." Yang Li patted his chest and pressed the crystal watch on his left hand. Buzz! The ray of light condensed into a solid form, and a black floating car appeared in midair. Yang Li leaped onto the car and turned back to wave at Lin Feng before leaving like the wind. Looking at Yang Li's departing figure, Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. This good brother of his had a carefree personality. Although he was a little impulsive, his heart wasn't bad. "Oh!" Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the sky. The drizzle had stopped, revealing the blue sky and white clouds. Even the whistling wind had turned into a cool breeze, making one feel much better. "The sky has cleared up." Lin Feng smiled. Jiaoyang District. Numerous towering reinforced concrete buildings were constructed. The streets were bustling with people, and all sorts of magnetic floating cars were shuttling back and forth. The air was very fresh, and there was a refreshing feeling that penetrated one's heart. In the 101st year of the war era, electromagnetic energy and elemental machinery had become the mainstream technology. There was no pollution. Lin Feng sped along the wide road like a vigorous cheetah. His right foot stomped on the ground, and his left foot stomped on the ground. His movements were smooth and coherent. Although his brain expanse had decreased, his physique that had been strengthened by genetic energy wouldn't degrade. His gaze landed on the bustling buildings in the city and the rare and precious magnetic floating cars. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. It was desire and persistence. It wasn't envy or jealousy. If Big Brother can't do it, then let me do it. I want my mother and younger sister to live a good life. I want them to stay in the best villa and drive the most expensive magnetic floating cars. Elder brother, I will definitely do it. This is the promise between us brothers. Lin Feng's eyes were in a daze as he thought of the times when he was young. The two brothers held each other's hands tightly and made a vow as men to protect their family for the rest of their lives. Big Brother had done it. Since young, Big Brother had been the pride of the entire family. He was also the person Lin Feng admired the most. Big Brother had entered the Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy with the best results and had broken through the critical line at the age of 15, becoming a genetic cultivator. Indeed, Lin Feng had once been the rising star of Jiaoyang District. However, many things weren't as what others saw. His talent was far from Big Brother's. His current strong physique was because he had been trained by Big Brother's whips since he was 6 years old. Indeed, Lin Feng's physical fitness index was so high that no one in the Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy could compare to him. However, he was unable to break the Academy's record because the Academy's record was held by Lin Feng when he was only 15 years old. Lin Feng's Big Brother was a truly perfect genius. Lin Zhan, Big Brother, if I don't see your corpse for a day, I won't believe that you're really dead. You must be waiting for me somewhere. Wait for me. I'll be there very soon. Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly and moved as fast as lightning. He was like a strong gust of cold wind. A few drops of water floated in the air. Was it raining again? Ping and district. This was a very ordinary district in Jiaoyang district. It wasn't considered good, but it wasn't bad either. It wasn't good, but it was good. Lin Feng stepped into the district. There was still some lingering sadness in his heart, but he couldn't stop thinking about his big brother. Big brother had bought the house in this district because he said that he liked the simple name of the house, Pinyin. However, he had given his family peace. Was he safe? Originally, his family's conditions could have been better. However, Big Brother had spent a lot of money on buying genetic fluids. Thus, Lin Feng was able to reach 95% of his brain expanse at the age of 16 and was close to the critical line. Lin Feng had never been a genius with unparalleled talent. Often, I don't know if you have talent or not, but you already possess two of the most valuable traits. One is persistence, and the other is working harder than anyone else. Phew! Lin Feng exhaled lightly. He couldn't help but close his eyes. Pressure, responsibility, guilt, and all kinds of emotions surged out, causing him to break down a year ago. Fortunately, he had finally walked out of this nightmare. At this moment, rumble, rumble, a loud sound broke through the air, instantly attracting the attention of all the residents in the district. They all looked up. Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes. He didn't need to look to know that the sound came from a magnetic hover car. Moreover, it was a very precious type. Ha! It moved like a gust of wind, but it was so still that it made one's heart stop beating. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or intentional, but this magnetic hover car, with a red body and extremely smooth lines, stopped right in front of Lin Feng, blocking his path. Lin Feng looked over. A faint light flashed in his eyes, but his face was expressionless. Whoosh, the arc-shaped skylight closed, revealing two figures. The man was extraordinarily handsome. He was wearing an expensive silver-white elemental battlesuit. The woman was as delicate as a flower. She smiled sweetly, and her watery eyes were especially charming. She got out of the car with a sweet smile. However, the beautiful woman instantly came face to face with Lin Feng. Her smile froze in an instant. Her eyes flashed with a hint of awkwardness. "I'll go back first." The beautiful woman looked at the handsome man. She gritted her teeth and was about to leave. "What? Are you embarrassed to see your old lover?" The handsome man smiled coldly. He grabbed the beautiful woman's wrist and pulled her into his arms. "No, no." The beautiful woman's face changed. She hurriedly said, "Wenlong, there's nothing between us." Him. That one word pierced Lin Feng's heart like a sharp awl. What a strange name. What a direct answer. Once, she was a childhood sweetheart. They lived in the same district and were very close. Although they didn't make their relationship clear, they secretly had feelings for each other. Unfortunately, everything had changed a year ago. Everyone had left him, including her, Wang Qian. Is that so? The handsome man laughed coldly. However, he didn't even look at Wang Qian. Instead, he stared at Lin Feng with a fiery gaze. He raised his head and said, "Hey, 10th grade genius. After hiding in your turtle shell for a year, you're finally willing to come out? You're quite well informed." Lin Feng smiled calmly. Sure, Wenlong's results in the Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy were second only to his. His second-grade expanse mind was outstanding, and he had always seen Lin Feng as his opponent. Lin Feng's title of 10th grade genius had only been announced for a short while. Sure, Wenlong must have come here specially to bring Wang Qian along to mock and provoke Lin Feng. Ha ha ha. Sure, Wenlong laughed wantonly. He hugged Wang Qian even tighter. The title of a 10th grade genius is so resounding. It's hard for me not to know about it. Don't you think so, Xiao Qian? Wang Qian bit her cherry lips. Her face was slightly pale, but she didn't dare to disagree. She immediately acknowledged. "Look, even your ex-lover is laughing at you." Lin Feng. Sure, Wenlong pretended to be shocked. Then, he glanced at Lin Feng with disdain. "If I were you, I wouldn't have embarrassed myself like this. You might as well find a hole to hide in." Lin Feng's eyes were clear. He glanced at Wang Qian, who was in pain but didn't dare to make sound. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Why bother? Back then, when Wang Qian chose to leave, he didn't blame her. He also didn't feel that it was a pity. Many things weren't necessarily regretful when they were lost. It was a pity that she chose Shi Wenlong, who was known for being a playboy. Just by looking at Shi Wenlong's words and actions, Lin Feng knew that he didn't treat her with sincerity. Instead, he only treated her as a toy. Sigh, Lin Feng shook his head, turned around, and left. Instantly, Wang Qian's face turned even paler and uglier. As for Shi Wenlong, Lin Feng didn't even have the slightest interest in him. Damn that poor bastard. Shi Wenlong's handsome face was a little ferocious. He looked at Lin Feng's back with undisguised hatred in his eyes. In a battle 2 years ago, he was beaten to a pulp by Lin Feng in front of everyone. That unforgettable humiliation was still deeply imprinted in his heart. Lin Feng, don't think that this will count. I'm not only going to steal your woman, but I'm going to make you regret it. With a cold snort, Shi Wenlong immediately started the red hovercar. It rumbled and left in an instant, leaving behind a pale and ugly Wang Qian. She bit her lip so hard that it bled. The new book, Knife Shatters the Galaxy, is officially uploaded. Xiao Xiao will bring everyone a magnificent and novel future world. If you like it, please give Xiao Xiao a few recommendation tickets and add the book to your collection. Your support will be the motivation for Xiao Xiao to write. Chapter 2. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, green grass formed a shade, and guard could be seen patrolling everywhere. Compared to the simple civilian district, the Ping district, whether it was the environment, conditions, or security, they were all quite good. Beep! After pressing his fingerprint, the door opened with a click. Brother. Lin Feng pushed the door open and entered. What welcomed him was a delicate and cute figure. She had large eyes, a small nose, lightly pursed cherry lips, and a gaze that carried obvious concern. It was none other than his younger sister, Lin Yuer. See? Lin Feng smiled and scratched his sister's nose. Meddlesome. Yuer Lin pouted and said, I'm not a child. Lin Feng smiled and took off his shoes before entering the living room. The house wasn't big, with an area of 150 square meters. It was simply decorated with 3 rooms and a living room, plus a sealed cultivation room. It was pretty much the standard configuration. Oh, it smells so good. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. Yes, Mom's mood is especially good today. Yuer Lin was overjoyed, her eyes shining. I haven't eaten hot food in a long time. Every day, it's cold compressed energy food. It's tasteless. As she said this, Yuer Lin couldn't help but pout, looking very cute. Lin Feng laughed involuntarily and said, You're the only one who's greedy. As long as your body is provided with enough calories and nutrients, isn't it the same? Besides, fresh vegetables aren't cheap. Lin Feng looked towards the kitchen. Although he said this, his heart felt warm. He knew why his mom's mood was especially good today. How is it the same? Mom's cooking is the best. Yuer Lin had an intoxicated expression. Don't worry, brother. Big brother left a lot of money. Before she finished speaking, Yuer Lin seemed to have thought of something. She nervously covered her mouth and stole a glance at Lin Feng like a frightened rabbit. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with longing. He smiled faintly and said, I'm fine. If it was before, he definitely wouldn't be so calm. But now that he had walked out of the nightmare haze in his heart, he felt like he had let go of everything. Or perhaps he had already accepted reality. Brother, you? Lin Yuer blinked her big eyes and looked at him curiously. I'm sorry, Yuer. Lin Feng gently hugged his sister and patted her head lovingly. I made you worry for the past year. Feeling the slight trembling of the petite body in his arms, Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Although his sister was still young, she had always been clever and knew a lot. Indeed, it was his incompetence as a brother. During the muddle-headed year, he had cultivated like a madman. He was like a lone boat that was unwilling to be washed away by the tsunami and wanted to break through the waves. But why bother? The tsunami waves would eventually pass, and he could patiently wait for the next voyage. Brother, Yuer said softly. Lin Feng responded. I'll never talk to Sister Qin again. Lin Yuer's voice was soft but firm. Lin Feng was slightly surprised. What's wrong? Don't you like her the most? But she doesn't treat my brother well, Yuer said. I don't like anyone who treats my brother badly. Lin Feng's heart tightened when he heard this. It was as if a soft spot in the depths of his heart had been touched. Tears welled up in his eyes. He was very touched. His sister's feelings for him were the same as his feelings for his elder brother. They were family, dependent, and worshipful. Although they weren't related by blood, they were closer than siblings. "Silly girl," Lin Feng murmured softly. "Brother, why are fresh vegetables so expensive? There's no place to grow them. The city is only so big. How can we grow vegetables if it's full of people?" "Oh, then are the big monsters in the wilderness especially powerful?" "Of course, but there are treasures everywhere in the wilderness. There are elemental crystals, spirit fruits, herbs, metal ores, and even those elemental beasts have countless treasures." Lin Feng patiently answered his sister's questions. His sister, who was about to turn 12, had a strong thirst for knowledge in this world. In another 3 months, his sister would be participating in a genetic test to see if she had a natural gene that would allow her brain expanse to naturally grow to 5%. This was the necessary condition to absorb genetic energy and become a genetic combatant. "Brother, actually, what is brain expanse?" You propped up her cheeks as she asked curiously. "It's here." Lin Feng smiled as he pointed at his head. In the previous era, the fourth epoch, most humans only developed 3% to 5% of their brains from birth to death. This is a great waste. The human brain has endless potential to be excavated. As one's brain expanse increases, humans can become smarter and stronger. I once read a book that recorded scientists who had made great contributions to humanity. For example, Newton, Einstein, etc. Their brain expanse was far above 5%. There were also athletes who held world records, boxing champions, etc. Their brain expanse was similarly close to the 10% threshold. The most shocking thing was during the Three Kingdoms era. During that period, many military strategists and generals had brain expanse that exceeded 10%. Some even reached 20% or 30%. What happened after that? Yuer was immediately intrigued. Lin Feng's eyes shimmered as he said slowly, "Slowly, humans began to place importance on themselves and their brains. They tried every means to excavate their potential, but ultimately failed to find the correct method to increase their brain expanse. Until, one day, they suddenly discovered the existence and profundity of ancient martial arts. With the heart as the source, one can communicate with the heaven and earth. By cultivating an inner force heart sutra, one can absorb the heaven and earth energy to strengthen one's body. Gather chi in the dantian. When one cultivates to the limit, one can attempt to open one of the conception and governing meridians, which is what we now call soul charging. Every time a soul is charged, one's brain expanse will continue to increase. When the conception and governing meridians are fully opened, one's strength and central nervous system will be opened, raising one's brain expanse to 30%. Be it the intelligence or physical strength of humans, they received a great increase. Their potential was greatly opened, and they officially entered the ancient martial epoch from the fourth epoch. Looking at his sister's sparkling eyes, Lin Feng could not help but smile. He still remembered that he had once asked his elder brother the same question. His elder brother had always placed great importance on history because he had said that history was a thick book that recorded everything that had happened. And the reason why humans could excavate their potential and enter the ancient martial epoch was because of the existence of history. Were the siblings talking about that makes you so happy? A gentle and graceful voice rang out. Lin Feng raised his head and saw a face that was as beautiful as a painting. Just like his mother's name, Ji Ruhua, it was as if she had walked out of a painting with peerless elegance. Tom did not leave any traces on his mother's face. Instead, there was an additional mature and intellectual beauty. Looking at his mother's face, Lin Feng's heart was filled with endless affection and longing. He felt as though he had not seen his mother for a full year. "Mom," Lin Feng opened his mouth. His voice was soft and hoarse, but it was filled with certainty. "I'm back." Smiling gently, Ji Ruhua looked at Lin Feng and said softly, "It's good that you're back." The simple meal had become the most delicious delicacies in the world because of the change in his heart. The family of three was happy and harmonious. Seeing his mother and sister smile after a long time, Lin Feng's heart was filled with warmth. This was his family. There were people worth protecting with his life. Without his elder brother, he was the only man in the family. He had to take care of the entire family. This was the promise he had made with his elder brother, and it was his responsibility as a man. Mom, I plan to join the Jiaoyang martial arts school. Lin Feng looked at his mother and said. Ji Ruhua did not seem surprised. For you, Lin Feng knew that he could not hide it from his mother. He nodded and said, Back then, my elder brother worked hard to earn money to cultivate me. Unfortunately, I failed to live up to his expectations. Yuer is smart and can endure hardships. If she has enough money to buy the gene fluid, I believe she will be able to cross the threshold and become a genetic warrior before the age of 18. Ji Ruhua smiled. Are you sure Yuer is born with the gene? Lin Feng frowned. My elder brother and I are both born with the gene. Yuer should be. A flash of uncertainty appeared between his brows. Lin Feng hesitated. He had forgotten that Yuer was not his mother's child. Yuer is indeed born with the gene, Ji Ruhua said. Lin Feng was surprised. As far as he knew, his sister had never done a genetic test. Looking at his mother, Lin Feng smiled. Since his mother said so, then she was 100% sure. Since he was young, his mother seemed to know everything. Nothing could be hidden from her. The probability of being born with the gene was only 1 in 1,000. However, the fact that his sister was able to become a part of it was definitely a piece of good news that made him excited. Have you really decided to start all over again? Ji Ruhua asked. Her beautiful eyes were full of wisdom, as if they could see through everything. Yes, Mom. Lin Feng was resolute. His eyes were bright. From the moment he took the first step, he already had an answer in his heart. It was difficult to make this decision. Genetic warriors and ancient warriors were two completely different paths. Whether it was cultivation, fighting, energy, or equipment, there was a huge difference. Moreover, the path of ancient warriors was 10 times or 100 times harder than that of genetic warriors. Their eyes met. Lin Feng looked at his mother. His conviction was not shaken at all. Perhaps he was not as talented as his brother, but he would not give up. No matter what setbacks or blows he faced, he would bravely and resolutely walk down this path. Very good. Ji Ruhua smiled. Her eyes were full of certainty and satisfaction. Suddenly, a thin brown book appeared in her hand. Lin Feng's eyes focused. He reached out and took the book from his mother. Puzzled, he asked, Mom, what is this? Heart Sutras, or perhaps... Heart Sutras, Ji Ruhua said calmly. Her eyes were blurred. Lin Feng found it hard to believe. Ancient Heart Sutras? How could his mother have Ancient Heart Sutras? Remember, Feng, unless you have no choice, do not reveal it, Ji Ruhua said seriously. Hearing this, Lin Feng's heart tightened. This sentence contained a lot of information. Ancient Heart Sutras were very important to ancient warriors. It was like the elemental heart to genetic warriors. Ancient warriors used Heart Sutras to absorb the energy of heaven and earth to strengthen their bodies. Combining it with martial arts, they could unleash powerful combat power. It could be said that ancient warriors could not do without Ancient Heart Sutras, whether they practiced or fought. According to the ranks, Ancient Heart Sutras were divided into unrated, 9th rated to 1st rated, yellow class to 9th rated, mystic class to 9th rated, Earth class, and the legendary Sky class. Most importantly, Ancient Heart Sutras above yellow class could not be privately taught or sold. Violators would be wanted by the Ancient Warrior Alliance. Therefore, to become an Ancient Warrior, one must first join a martial arts club or a martial arts sect. Only then could one obtain good Ancient Heart Sutras. Obviously, the Ancient Heart Sutras in his hands were not ordinary. Don't worry, Ji Ruhua seemed to have seen through Lin Feng's thoughts. She said softly, As long as you don't make a move, no one will know what Heart Sutras you are practicing. Oh, right, Lin Feng answered blankly. Suddenly, he understood. Indeed, if it was just cultivation, who would know if he did not say anything? You don't have to sacrifice yourself for your family, silly child. Because they love you very much, Jiruhua said softly. Go, cultivate well. Their eyes met, brimming with the warmth of a mother and son. Nothing needed to be said. Thank you, Mom. Lin Feng nodded lightly. Holding the thin book in his hands, his heart was filled with warmth. The main reason he wanted to join Jiayang Martial Arts Club was because of the ancient Heart Sutras. With his Heart Sutras, his future path would be much wider, and he would have more choices. Jiayang Martial Arts Club was affiliated with Sunset Martial Arts Club. In Sunset City, other than Sunset Martial Arts Club, there was also the martial arts sect. I will definitely become an ancient warrior. Lin Feng clenched his fists. He was about to turn 18. He had to support the entire family. Watching Lin Feng enter the cultivation room, Jiruhua's beautiful eyes flickered slightly. Silly child, your big brother's talent is indeed outstanding, but you are actually not inferior to him at all. Zhang Er's personality is like his father's. He is too rigid and easily broken. Feng, you have a tenacious and indomitable personality. Setbacks are the best training for you, and you will definitely shine brightly in the future. Believe in Mom. Becoming an ancient warrior is the path you should take. Chapter 3. After confirming his fingerprints, Lin Feng entered the training room. The space was 50 square meters, and there was only a normal-sized genetic nutrition cabin equipped with a simple consciousness helmet. A glimmer of light flashed past his eyes. Lin Feng's mind was filled with memories of the past. He had spent a large portion of his time here for the past 6 years, absorbing genetic energy, increasing his mind expanse, honing his saber skills in the consciousness world. His strength had been steadily increasing. Under the envious gazes of his peers, his mind expanse had reached 95% at the age of 16. Although it couldn't be compared to his elder brother, it was rare in Jiayang District and even Lori City. Even the top 3 advanced genetic academies, Elite Crown Academy, had offered excellent conditions to recruit him in advance. Originally, everything was going smoothly. He would enter Elite Crown Academy and become a genetic warrior. He would train hard and follow in his elder brother's footsteps. But because of that accident, everything changed. Wah! Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he looked at the genetic nutrition cabin. He clenched his right fist and trembled slightly. That day was no different from his usual training. He soaked in the genetic nutrition cabin, and his body automatically absorbed genetic energy. His consciousness entered the illusory space to train his saber skills. But right when he was in the middle of his training, an extremely terrifying and intense pain suddenly assaulted him. Pong, pong, pong. Lin Feng pressed on his chest, and his expression was ugly. Thinking of the heart-wrenching pain that day, he still had lingering fears and goosebumps. That was a pain he had never experienced before. His head felt as though it was about to explode. All his pain, nerves were ruptured in an instant. He couldn't feel his body, heartbeat, or breathing. He fainted from the pain. When he woke up again, it was already 3 days later. Lin Feng had always kept this matter in his heart. He had never mentioned it to anyone, including his mother and sister. This was because he didn't want them to worry. He had thought that it was just a coincidence. But after entering Elite Crown Academy, during the Mind Expanse retest, the nightmare erupted. A mere level 6 Mind Expanse. At that moment, everyone was stunned, including himself and the vice president of Crown Elite Academy, who was testing him with a face full of smiles. Seeing the numbers on the Mind Expanse tester, the vice president's expression changed drastically. He roared, "What kind of joke is this?" That disdainful and angry gaze was like a sharp sword that ruthlessly stabbed into his heart, causing him to be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The difference between the 6th class and the 1st class was more than a chasm. However, this was not the end. It was merely the beginning of a nightmare. His mind expanse began to degenerate bit by bit. No matter how much he cultivated, he couldn't keep up with the speed of degeneration. The feeling was like his vitality was draining away. Death was approaching, but there was nothing he could do to stop it. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. It was at this moment the bad news of his big brother's disappearance came, causing him to completely collapse. Phew! Lin Feng exhaled deeply. His tightly clenched right fist slowly loosened. His palm was covered in sweat. This was a nightmare that he couldn't bear to recall. The haze had lasted for an entire year, and he had almost been unable to return. Why did my mind expanse regress? Lin Feng looked at his hands, unable to figure it out no matter how much he pondered. This was like a huge puzzle that caused him to be extremely perplexed. Despite flipping through all sorts of books, he still couldn't find an answer. Pa! Lin Feng's hands flickered with radiance. It was white and transparent, yet it also had a metallic luster, giving off a feeling of power. Genetic energy. Damaged genes? Lin Feng shook his head and rejected the idea. Even if this was a publicly acknowledged reason, it was true. If one's genes were damaged, it would be hard for one's strength to improve. However, he had never seen his mind expanse regress. Furthermore, he understood his own body the best. If there was any problem with his body, there was no reason for him to not be able to sense it. Apart from the intense pain I felt during the accident, there were no other symptoms. Furthermore, after the accident, my fitness index seemed to have increased by quite a bit. Lin Feng fell into deep thought. Before the accident, his fitness index was at the level of ordinary beginner genetic warriors. However, after the accident, his fitness index that should have decreased had increased instead of decreasing. Instead, it had increased to the level of excellent beginner genetic warriors. He couldn't find a reason for it, just like how his mind expanse had mysteriously deteriorated. Forget it. Lin Feng smiled in relief. Let bygones be bygones. Regardless, this was a fact that couldn't be changed. Actually, I should be rejoicing. Lin Feng pondered in his heart. If the deterioration of my mind expanse happened after I broke through the critical line and became a genetic warrior, my Dantian would fuse with the elemental heart. That would truly be the end of the road. Now, at the very least, I can turn back and walk another path, becoming an ancient warrior. Lin Feng smiled. Taking a step back, the world was vast. When the heavens closed a door, they would definitely open a window. Walking to the back of the gene nourishment cabin, Lin Feng pressed a silver button. Instantly, rows of sealed glass bottles appeared. These were the gene fluids that his elder brother had prepared for him. They were expensive, but it was a pity that he had wasted a lot of them over the past year. 6, 7, 8, there's still 12 bottles left. Lin Feng finished counting very quickly. Including the ones given by the academy, it should be enough for my sister to use for half a year. Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy would give him a bottle of gene fluid every month. According to his cultivation experience, 3 bottles of gene fluid should be enough for him. Since he knew that his sister was a natural genetic warrior, he naturally had to prepare in advance and arrange the best cultivation path for his sister, just like what his elder brother had done in the past. Including these 3 months, in other words, he still had 9 months to prepare. Time was actually very tight. I still have 3 months to graduate, so I can still receive 3 bottles of gene fluid. Lin Feng organized the gene fluid. He planned to give the 3 bottles of gene fluid to Ollie. Even though he couldn't enter the 3 high-grade genetic academies, Ollie still had hope. In terms of talent, Ollie was actually quite good, but it was a pity that his family background was ordinary. If he had absorbed enough gene fluid from a young age, even if he couldn't cross the critical line, his strength wouldn't be any weaker than Sherwin Long. As a good brother, he would naturally help if he could. After organizing the gene fluid, Lin Feng was about to stand up. Suddenly, Lin Feng was slightly stunned. His gaze landed on the corner where the gene fluid was originally placed. However, after being organized, there was a small section of pitch black color that was very similar to the color inside the storage table. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to tell apart. Lin Feng moved a bottle of gene fluid away, and his eyes instantly lit up. A black metal box was lying there quietly. This is... Lin Feng took out the metal box with puzzlement and weighed it in his hand. It was very heavy, but also very light. The heavy part was the box, but the light part was the thing inside the box. Pa! Lin Feng opened the black metal box. In an instant, a resplendent, silvery white light shot out, illuminating the entire cultivation room. It was a heart that had distinct edges and seemed to be formed from millions and millions of crystal fragments. It was sparkling and translucent, reflecting silvery white light from all directions. It was like an existence of an emperor. Lin Feng was astonished. Looking at this silvery white heart-shaped crystal that wasn't considered big, he felt like he was suffocating. Elemental heart. This was a true elemental heart. Genetic warriors could absorb genetic energy, store genetic energy, and use genetic energy. The source of all power was the elemental heart. Simply put, it was the dantian of a genetic warrior. The elemental heart was divided into E grade, D grade, C grade, B grade, A grade, and also the legendary S grade that surpassed a grade. Each grade was further divided into 9 grades. For example, E grade. The worst was E9 and the best was E1. However, even the worst E9 elemental heart wasn't cheap. Of course, if one could enter the 3 high-grade genetic academies, join the city guards, or even become the bodyguard of a wealthy merchant, they would be able to get one of the 3 types of E9 elemental hearts for free. Back then, when the Crown Elite Academy recruited Lin Feng in advance, one of the conditions was that Lin Feng could choose any type of D1 elemental heart. The price of a D-grade elemental heart was already quite ridiculous. A C-grade elemental heart was even more terrifying. However, the silvery white heart-shaped crystal in front of Lin Feng was A grade. A true A-grade elemental heart, titanium heart. The starting price was a 8 grade. Titanium heart was quite good among rare metals. It belonged to the strengthening type of the 3 major elements. Perhaps in terms of strengthening defense, it wasn't as strong as the molybdenum heart. In terms of strengthening strength, it wasn't as strong as the tungsten heart. However, it was quite well-rounded. Its unique neo-martial art, titanium grade body, had an intimidating power. It could be said that once this titanium heart was born, it would definitely cause a huge earthquake. However, to Lin Feng, this titanium heart had a completely different meaning. Offing, which elemental heart do you like the most? Titanium heart. Haha, good taste. It's steady and extraordinary. It suits your character, Offing. I'm just thinking about it. Brother, the titanium heart has always been priceless. How can we afford it? Don't be a coward. Offing, remember, as a man, you must dare to think and do. You must not be afraid of any difficulties. The titanium heart is nothing. When you break through the critical line, I will give it to you. That forthright and magnanimous voice still lingered in his mind. However, things had already changed. To Lin Feng, Lin Zhan's influence on him was the most unforgettable. Until now, he still remembered his brother's earnest teachings. This year, he had endured unimaginable pressure and pain. However, Lin Feng still stubbornly endured it. Brother, you still remember. Lin Feng held the black box in his hands and muttered softly. He didn't expect that his brother would always remember what he said casually. It was obvious that this black box had already existed a year ago. However, who had been in a daze and experiencing nightmares for the past year, didn't notice it at all. The titanium heart was very precious. However, the most precious thing was his brother's kind intentions. Thank you, brother. Lin Feng closed his eyes. His heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. Although he might not be able to use this titanium heart anymore, it was the best gift he had ever received. Very quickly, Lin Feng calmed down. Although the titanium heart was very powerful, it couldn't provide any substantial help to him now. There was only one path left in front of him. Shua. Flipping open the thin brown book, Lin Feng's heart was calm. However, there was also a hint of curiosity. Roar. A dragon's roar resounded in his ears. The huge dragon's head was vivid and lifelike. A pair of dragon's eyes shone brightly, causing Lin Feng to be shocked. Pa! The virtual image flickered, revealing 4 lofty and unyielding words at the top of the book. 9 Dragon Sutra. What a powerful word realm. Lin Feng was instantly filled with respect. Just from the words alone, it could be seen that the strength of the writer was very profound. Flipping page by page, Lin Feng quickly entered a state of mind. He carefully read and comprehended. Every word was a gem. Every sentence was crucial. In an instant, he was immersed in the sea of ancient martial arts Heart Sutra. 10 minutes later, there are actually 3 levels. Lin Feng flipped to the last page and was pleasantly surprised. Ninth rate to first rate Heart Sutra basically only had 1 level. Even the second level was rare. This 9-Dragon Sutra was indeed above yellow, rank 9th grade. It was much better than the benefits of Jiaoyang Martial Arts School. Even if he entered Sunset Martial Arts School, he would only be taught first-rate Heart Sutra. Good. Lin Feng clenched his fists. He was much more confident. In the early stages of ancient martial arts training, a good Heart Sutra would undoubtedly yield twice the results with half the effort. As for the origin of the 9-Dragon Sutra, his mother must have her reasons for not telling him. There was no need to get to the bottom of it. The important thing was that it could help him become an ancient martial artist and break through one of the 7 souls. His mind expanse would cross the critical line and reach 10%. 10% was the true dividing line. It was also known as the critical point. In the previous era, humans had been stuck at this critical line for a long time, unable to break through. It wasn't until they discovered the existence and profundity of ancient martial arts that humans truly crossed this threshold. Although technology was very advanced now, the proportion of humans who exceeded 10% of their mind expanse and became ancient martial artists or genetic warriors was still very low. Once they crossed it, they would be a dragon among men with a bright future. Even if they were the weakest beginner genetic warriors or beginner ancient martial artists, if they joined the city guards, they would be able to let their family live a well-off life. If they couldn't cross it, they would be commoners without any status or power, at the mercy of others. I must succeed. Lin Feng's eyes were burning. I must not let mom and sister live a life of fear and suffering. I must become an ancient martial artist. Huff, huff, in the cultivation room, Lin Feng sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His right foot was placed on top of his left, and his left foot was placed on top of his right. His shoulders were relaxed and drooped down. His spine was vertical, and his tailbone was suspended in the air. His hands were placed under his dantian. He was like a hexagonal pagoda, going from bottom to top. He was as stable as a rock. Lin Feng's mind gradually focused. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment, as Lin Feng took deep breaths. It was quiet. Only the sound of Lin Feng's subtle and gentle breathing could be heard in the cultivation room. 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, I still can't do it. Lin Feng opened his eyes. There was a hint of contemplation between his brows. He opened the 9-Dragon scripture again and carefully read and pondered it word by word. He murmured, "All ancient martial art formulas are the same. The first step of cultivation is to sense the existence of the energy of heaven and earth. With the heart as the source, you can communicate with heaven and earth. Only then can you officially cultivate." What did I do wrong? Feet, hands, spine? Lin Feng frowned slightly, and his heart trembled. Because it was his first time cultivating, and he didn't have a teacher to teach him, Lin Feng didn't know what the standard was. He really couldn't make up his mind. Sensing the energy of heaven and earth has nothing to do with the quality of the ancient martial art formulas. Those with good talent can sense it in a day and a half. Those with ordinary talent need a year and a half to sense it. Those with poor talent may not be able to sense the existence of the energy of heaven and earth in their lifetime. Lin Feng said lightly, but he knew a lot about the cultivation of ancient martial arts. His gaze was fixed on the 9-Dragon scripture. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up and he laughed. He couldn't help but shake his head. One word was silence. What was silence? It wasn't only the body that was silent, but also the heart. He was too eager to become an ancient martial arts practitioner. There was obsession and desire in the center of meditation. Naturally, it couldn't be considered true silence. The cultivation of ancient martial arts practitioners used the heart as the source. They used the heart to communicate with heaven and earth. If the heart couldn't be quiet, how could they sense heaven and earth? The more anxious it was, the more chaotic it would be. I understand. Lin Feng adjusted his breathing and slowly closed his eyes. This time, he emptied his mind and his heart was clear. Almost instantly, Lin Feng entered a perfect state of meditation. He flipped open the page of the book and the person sitting cross-legged. It was the same feeling as Lin Feng. Soon, Lin Feng felt the changes in his body. He blended perfectly with heaven and earth, as if he had become a part of heaven and earth. The energy of heaven and earth. Lin Feng's heart was moved. It was an existence that couldn't be seen or touched. However, at this moment, Lin Feng could clearly feel it. It was completely different from genetic energy. It was like a piece of white paper, pure and clean. It revolved around his body and became more and more concentrated. Lin Feng was even more shocked. The change in his heart made it difficult for him to remain calm. His entire person suddenly came out of the state of meditation. Bang! Bang! Lin Feng could clearly feel his heart beating faster. Even his breathing became more hurried. He didn't see wrongly. That was indeed the energy of heaven and earth just now. However, how could it be so much? As far as he knew, normal ancient martial art practitioners could only sense strands of the energy of heaven and earth. Even the most talented ancient martial arts practitioners could only sense the energy of heaven and earth like raindrops. However, what he sensed, not to mention raindrops, even using fog to describe it, was too far off. It was like a dense cloud. Lin Feng took a deep breath. His eyes glowed, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. It was too shocking. It was just like how genetic warriors absorbed genetic energy. Even if they were born with the same genes, there would be differences in strength. The speed and amount of genetic energy absorption would be different. Although Lin Feng wasn't proficient in the cultivation of ancient martial arts, at least he knew the simplest rule. The more energy of heaven and earth one sensed, the more they would absorb. Naturally, the faster one cultivated. Chapter 4. In the living room, Ji Ruhua put down the book in her hand. Her deep eyes looked toward the cultivation room with a hint of surprise. 2 hours and 25 minutes. Ji Ruhua exclaimed softly. A satisfied smile appeared on her picturesque face. 35 minutes earlier than expected. A descendant of the Ji family has cultivated the first level of the 9-dragon scripture in 4 hours. He is a 1 in a million genius. If he succeeds in 3 hours, he is a prodigy. Feng Er's aptitude is comparable to that of the Ji family's past generations of heroes. Ji Ruhua's beautiful eyes flashed with motherly love. Hard work will not be wasted. Child, I believe you have already discovered the secret of your body. It is one of the reasons why your brain has regressed. However, its existence is not suffering. Instead, it is the battle knife in your hand. With it, you will go further and faster on the path of an ancient martial artist. How can I smell the fragrance of plum blossoms without experiencing the bone-chilling cold? Ji Ruhua picked up the book and smiled. In the cultivation room, nothing could be seen with the naked eye. However, if one used the mind's eye to sense, they could clearly see that Lin Feng was like an awakened dragon, greedily absorbing the energy of heaven and earth. The rich energy of heaven and earth gathered from all directions and rushed into Lin Feng's body at an extremely fast speed, absorbing the energy of heaven and earth. This was the cultivation method of an ancient martial artist. With the heart as the source, one could communicate with heaven and earth to strengthen one's body. The higher the level of the heart formula, the more difficult it was to comprehend. However, the cultivation results would be better. What is this? Lin Feng, who had successfully comprehended the first level of the 9-dragon scripture, was curious and puzzled. As the endless energy of heaven and earth rushed into his dantian, Lin Feng discovered something strange in his dantian. Using the internal vision technique, he could clearly see that in the center of his dantian, there was actually a strange small ball. Compared to his dantian, this small ball was not even 1/10,000th of its size. However, it was very special. It seemed to have a life of its own as it spun on its own. Furthermore, it had a unique energy aura. It was very strong, an aura stronger than the energy of heaven and earth. Lin Feng shivered inwardly. His heart was as clear as a mirror. Using internal vision, The small ball seemed to be absorbing energy as it spun. As it spun, the energy aura seeped out of the small ball and slowly flowed into his bones' skin meridians. Its function was similar to the Dantian's Dantian. The Dantian's function of heaven's Dantian. Of heaven and earth's energy of heaven and earth was absorbed by the Dantian. Of heaven and earth energy flowed into the Dantian, of course. Wait, Lin Feng's heart stirred. Of the time. Of it. Maybe it's also related to the deterioration of my brain. Lin Feng had an intuition. Of course. Thanks to it, my fitness index has increased by 1 level, Lin Feng said softly. Originally, his fitness index was considered above average among his peers. Now, however, it was a top-notch existence. Ever since he had opened the door to become an ancient warrior, Lin Feng had never left the cultivation room. Often, I don't know if you have talent. However, you already possess 2 of the most valuable traits. One is persistence, and the other is working harder than anyone else. His elder brother's words were deeply imprinted in Lin Feng's heart. That was what Lin Feng had been doing all along. Even when he was at his lowest point, Lin Feng had persevered. November 1st, 2 months before graduation. While the door of the cultivation room opened, Lin Feng walked out. The classes of Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy were relatively free. There was no requirement for the students to attend them. However, the first day of every month was the day when the gene fluid was distributed. Including the bottle that was stored in October, Lin Feng had received a total of 2 bottles of gene fluid. Chi! Lin Feng punched out fiercely. His eyes glowed. Very quickly, although it was just a casual punch, the speed and strength of the punch had increased significantly. Looking at his right fist, Lin Feng couldn't hide the surprise in his heart. I've become stronger again. I didn't expect that my fitness index, which should have reached a bottleneck, could still increase. It was an unexpected surprise. Lin Feng was very clear about his body. Back then, when his mind expanse had reached 10%, his fitness index should have been strengthened to the limit. Even if the deterioration of his mind expanse didn't cause his fitness index to deteriorate, there was no reason for it to increase. The only explanation was, It's the small ball in my Dantian, Lin Feng said softly. Over the past month, he had been continuously cultivating the first level of the 9 Dragon Sutra. He had also been observing and exploring the small ball. It was as he had guessed. As the small ball spun, it released a strange energy that spread to every part of his body. It had the same effect as the energy of heaven and earth strengthening. It strengthened his body and his cells. Moreover, over the past month, the small ball had grown a lot. It should be 3 to 4 times bigger than before. Lin Feng thought to himself. Although it still felt small, like a grain of sand in his Dantian, it had indeed grown. As the small ball grew bigger, not only did its spinning speed increase, but the amount of energy it absorbed and seeped out also increased. However, to him, the existence of this small ball was still a mystery. Moreover, he still had lingering fears. This was because his mind expanse had already deteriorated once. Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy. Isn't that the grade 10 genius? Should be softer. It won't be good if he hears you. It's such a pity. I heard that he was once the rising star of our Jiaoyang district. However, due to an accident, his genes were damaged and his wings were broken. Walking on the academy's gravel path, Lin Feng looked at the many new and beautiful teaching buildings, floating magnetic fortresses, and capsule houses. There was a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Lin Feng completely turned a deaf ear to the gossip in the surroundings, and the various gazes converged onto him. After experiencing this year, he'd long since overcome his inner demons. There are only 2 months left. In 2 months, I will leave this place, he sighed. Lin Feng looked around. There were many 12 or 13-year-old youths running around the academy. They were full of vitality. He seemed to see his past self from them. He was chasing after his elder brother's footsteps. From an ignorant youth, he gradually grew up. Soon, he would leave the academy and enter the wilderness. He would fight with the elemental beasts in the ruined world and become a real man. Often, a loud and surprised voice came from behind, interrupting Lin Feng's thoughts. Turning his head to look, it was his good brother, A Li, who was rushing over from afar like a howling gale. "Slow down," Lin Feng said with a smile. "Huh." Yang Li laughed heartily. He stopped and put his arm around Lin Feng's shoulder. "I finally see you often." Lin Feng smiled. "Are you in a good mood?" "How could I be?" Yang Li's face immediately turned bitter. "Don't mention it. My old man is really stingy. I had to pester him for half a day and say all sorts of nice things before he was willing to buy me a small bottle of gene fluid. Often, tell me, how can there be such a stingy father in this world? I even suspect that I am not his biological son." Listening to Yang Li's complaints, Lin Feng's heart was touched. Father, what a luxurious word. He had never seen his father since he could remember. He didn't know what his name was, where he was, or whether he was still alive. He had asked his mother and elder brother before, but he didn't get an answer. "Huh!" Yang Li's saliva was flying everywhere, but when he saw Lin Feng's expression, he hurriedly covered his mouth. As Lin Feng's best friend, he knew some of Lin Feng's secrets. "Ha ha!" Yang Li laughed awkwardly and changed the topic. "By the way, Offing, what are your plans after graduation?" "Plans?" Yang Li's question made Lin Feng snap out of his daze. In the past month, he had thought a lot about his future. With the Nine Dragons scripture, he didn't need to enter the Blazing Sun Dojo. Instead, he could choose one of the martial sects in Setting Sun City. After all, in terms of scale, development, and even challenges, the martial sects were more suitable for him than the dojo. However, the martial sects weren't easy to enter. "I haven't decided yet. My goal is to join the martial sects, but the city guards aren't bad either," Lin Feng replied. Each had its advantages. Joining the martial sects would give him a better future, while joining the city guards would give him more security. However, regardless of whether he joined the martial sects or the city guards, there was a prerequisite. He had to break through the critical line and become an ancient martial artist. "You have ambitions." Yang Li's eyes lit up. "When the time comes, we two brothers will form a small adventurer team and explore the wilderness together." "Do you not want to live anymore?" Lin Feng laughed. "What's there to be afraid of?" Chapter 5. After confirming his fingerprints, Lin Feng entered the classroom on the 30th floor. The spacious space reflected the light from the metal floor, and the huge SLR floor-to-ceiling glass allowed him to see the academy's scenery clearly. Gene nutrition cabins were placed neatly, equipped with supercomputers and consciousness helmets for the students to cultivate and study 24 hours a day. Even now, there were a few gene nutrition cabins that were tightly shut. Number 32. Lin Feng slowly walked to his gene nutrition cabin, which was slightly smaller than the one at home. He gently touched the cold metal surface, which was unfamiliar yet familiar. He had been receiving education here since he was 12 years old. There was a complete curriculum in the supercomputer, and he could study while absorbing the gene fluid. Of course, the academy also had instructors, but there were not many classes. It was because the instructors had taught him, and cultivation depended on the individual. "Yo, what wind blew our 10th grade genius here?" A mocking voice rang out. Shi Wenlong, who was wearing a silver-white elemental battle suit, walked in with his head held high. He hugged Wang Qian, who was wearing a red dress and had her head lowered, and two followers followed behind him. The two followers immediately laughed and whistled. All the students in the classroom also gathered their gazes. They wanted to know how much strength Lin Feng had left after his brain region had regressed to 5% after 2 years. Or was Lin Feng's genes really damaged, as the rumors said, and he could no longer use the gene energy and become a useless person? However, they were destined to be disappointed, because Lin Feng did not react at all. "Say what you just said again if you have the guts." The hot-tempered Yang Li took a step forward like an enraged bull. "Why? A dog relying on its master's power." Shi Wenlong sneered and glanced at Lin Feng with contempt. He sighed and said, "Unfortunately, your master is a good-for-nothing." As he spoke, he hugged Wang Qian, who was beside him. lifted her chin, and kissed her forcefully. Instantly, wolf cries were heard. Lin Feng looked over, and his heart was as calm as still water. He glanced at the red elemental battle suit on Wang Qian. He knew that with her family background, she could not afford it. The innocent young girl in his memory had already grown up. Bah, adulterous couple. Yang Li dared to be angry and dared to speak. He mocked. Isn't it just some money? Isn't it just a second generation? You've really forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed. I say, young Master Toothless, 2 years ago, you were beaten by offing at the battle arena. Have you forgotten so quickly? Everyone around couldn't help but laugh. The nickname Toothless Young Master was obtained by Shi Wenlong 2 years ago in the battle arena. In that battle, he had lost 2 of his front teeth to Lin Feng in front of everyone. Since then, he had gotten this nickname. However, other than Yang Li, no one dared to mention Shi Wenlong's embarrassing matter. Sure enough, Shi Wenlong's face immediately turned ashen, and his eyes were filled with anger. You're courting death. Shi Wenlong pushed Wang Qian away, his eyes red. His 2 lackeys also rushed forward angrily. Lin Feng frowned, and genetic energy instantly circulated throughout his body. Although he didn't want to cause trouble, he wouldn't watch his good brother get bullied because of him. More importantly, if Yang Li lost the record because of this, he would be in big trouble. Suddenly, stop! An ice-cold shout sounded, as if the whole space was going to be frozen. The originally dense smell of gunpowder instantly disappeared. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and the circulating genetic energy immediately dispersed. What he saw was a short-haired girl in white combat clothes. She had a valiant and formidable bearing, and she had a pair of perfectly round and slender legs. Her appearance was like a resplendent star, instantly becoming the center of attention. Instructor Yin Rushuang. Very strong. Lin Feng looked at his instructor, Yin Rushuang, in silence. Just now, he felt a strong pressure, as if he was being targeted by a hunter. This was the strength of a high-level genetic warrior. What are you doing? Yin Rushuang's ice-cold gaze swept past Lin Feng and finally landed on Shi Wenlong. No, nothing. Shi Wenlong was all smiles. Just saying hello. After saying that, he glared fiercely at Yang Li and Lin Feng before returning to his seat with an expression that said, just wait and see. His 2 lackeys hurriedly followed him, not daring to look at Yin Rushuang. What a joke. There was once a student who didn't know what was good for him and tried to flirt with Yin Rushuang. As a result, not only was one of his legs crippled, but his 3rd leg was also almost crippled. The prestige of an instructor was not to be challenged, and no one dared to act rashly. Yin Rushuang never cared about the conflicts between students. It was normal for young people to be hot-blooded. As long as they didn't cause trouble within her sight, it was fine. Yin Rushuang took out a password-protected box and opened it with her fingerprint. Immediately, 50 bottles of gene fluid appeared, sparkling and translucent. The eyes of all the students shone. Lin Feng's heart was moved as well. Indeed, it was enough to make one drool. Lin Feng was clear that every bottle of gene fluid was expensive on the market. Take them one by one according to their serial number, Yin Rushuang said indifferently. The students began to take the gene fluid in order, while Yin Rushuang took notes. Soon, it was Lin Feng's turn. 2 bottles. Yin Rushuang reported the number. The students below all looked at her with envy. No one would complain about having too much gene fluid, but to Lin Feng, it was a completely different feeling. He used to be like the other students, yearning for this day every month. But now his heart was calm. Protest. The quiet atmosphere was instantly broken. Lin Feng turned his head and met Shi Wenlong's eyes. Shi Wenlong's lips curled into a sneer as he shouted, I don't think the Academy needs to waste any more resources on a 10th grade trash. Giving Lin Feng gene fluid is a pure waste. He can't use it at all. Don't you all agree? Shi Wenlong said righteously, encouraging the other students. That's right. That's right. The 2 Bantan lackeys echoed in unison, causing the other students to start discussing amongst themselves. The originally peaceful classroom immediately became noisy. However, Yin Rushuang's icy cold voice instantly caused everyone to quickly quiet down. In my opinion, you're the trash. In Rushuang's cold gaze instantly made Shi Wenlong's face flush red. He was dumbstruck, but he didn't know whether to stand or sit. Lin Feng laughed. Although his voice was soft, it was even more ear-piercing and heart-wrenching in Shi Wenlong's ears. His handsome appearance immediately became distorted. Damn that bitch. One day I'll ride her under my asterisk asterisk. Let's see if she'll still be so arrogant when she screams. Shi Wenlong's face was full of anger, and he gnashed his teeth. That's right. She's so arrogant. What's so great about her? Ho Jin, the sidekick, had a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks and a fawning face. I say, monkey spirit, when the boss finishes tasting her, we'll be in luck. The other sidekick, Insei, had a lustful look in his eyes. He rubbed his palms and reminisced. Every girl the boss has played with is super hot. Just thinking about it makes me drool. You lecherous snake, have you set your eyes on Wang Qian? Monkey spirit sneered. How could I? Lascivious snake smiled embarrassedly, but his small eyes kept rolling. Shi Wenlong's eyebrows flashed with arrogance, and he said disdainfully, You're all short-sighted and have no ambition. What's a woman? If you have money, you won't have to worry about women. You want Wang Qian, right? Sure, kill Lin Feng and Yang Li, that dog. You can play with her to your heart's content. Monkey spirit and lascivious snake's eyes suddenly lit up, and their hearts surged. Boss, are you serious? Lascivious snake's breathing suddenly became rapid, and even his pants became tense. Nonsense. When has the boss ever lied to us? Monkey spirit stared. Shi Wenlong snorted in disdain. Useless fellow. A glint flashed in his eyes, and Lin Feng's figure appeared. The veins on Shi Wenlong's forehead bulged, giving him an extremely sinister appearance. For him, there was nothing more delightful than killing Lin Feng. Currently, Lin Feng and Yang Li were walking on the road. Haha, how delightful! Yang Li laughed heartily while holding his stomach. Offing, you didn't see Shi Wenlong's expression. It's as red as an apple. I'm dying of laughter. Teacher Yin is too cool. With a single sentence, he scolded that brat Shi Wenlong to the point that he even has the heart to kill himself. Lin Feng sighed lightly. Yeah, Teacher Yin was a high-level genetic warrior and had the backing of the academy. So what if Shi Wenlong had some background? Would he dare to provoke him? But what about himself? In the academy, no matter what, he had the protection of his identity as a student. However, he would have to leave the academy in 2 months. At that time, he would no longer have any protection. It wasn't easy to raise one's brain expanse from 5% to 10% in one go. Even his elder brother had spent 3 years to do so. The cultivation speed of an ancient martial artist would only be even slower. If he wanted to join the city guards or the martial society, he would have to wait at least a few years. Maybe I should join the Jiayang District's guards. Lin Feng pondered. A lot of students who graduated from the Jiayang District's Elementary Genetic Academy would choose to become guards. After all, it was safe and had benefits. But speaking of which, this brat Shi Wenlong is indeed lucky. Yang Li pouted. He spends his days eating, drinking, and playing games. Yet, he still managed to reach second-grade brain expanse with his background. At that time, he might be able to enter one of the 3 high-level genetic academies. Even if he doesn't, he will definitely become a genetic warrior. Even if he fuses with a D-class elemental heart, his strength will surpass mine by a few streets. There was a hint of desolation in his words. Lin Feng looked over. How could he not know what Yang Li was thinking? Yang Li wasn't envious. Instead, he was unhappy that he didn't vent his anger. His talent and hard work clearly surpassed Shi Wenlong's, but his strength couldn't compare to Shi Wenlong's. Do you still remember what I told you a month ago, Ollie? Lin Feng smiled as he took out 2 bottles of gene fluid and handed them over. Don't give up. There are still 2 months before graduation. Do your best. In my heart, you are 100 times stronger than Shi Wenlong. With his eyes wide open, Yang Li reacted abruptly. You can't do that often. How can I take your catch? Lin Feng interrupted Yang Li's words and threw the 2 bottles of gene fluid at him. Yang Li was so frightened that he hurriedly caught them in a fluster. Looking at his close friend, Lin Feng said softly, The gene fluid is just a decoration with me now. It's better to make the best use of it. It won't be too late to return it to me when you have the ability in the future. Holding the 2 bottles of gene fluid, Yang Li's face flushed red. He looked at Lin Feng, so moved that he couldn't speak. All right, you're a man. Don't be so sentimental. Lin Feng turned around and glanced at the classroom in the distance. He patted Yang Li's teary eyes and said with a smile, "Let's go. Accompany me to the blazing Sun Battle Plaza." "No problem. I'll pay for whatever you buy today." "Is that so? I'm just lacking an elemental battle suit." Ah. The 2 figures slowly disappeared from the academy. Behind the floor-to-ceiling glass in the classroom, 2 pairs of sinister eyes could be seen. Chapter 6. Lin Feng and Yang Li walked through the Jiaoyang Battle Plaza. This was the largest commercial area in Jiaoyang District, the Battle Plaza. Small accessories, such as crystal watches and compasses, large items, such as gene nutrition cabins, elemental battle suits, and even elemental hearts could be bought here. Of course, the quality was much worse than in Luori City, but it was enough for ordinary ancient martial artists and Geno warriors. "Offing, are you really going to buy an elemental battle suit?" Yang Li looked at Lin Feng nervously. Turning his head and looking at the serious Yang Li, Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. "Do you have that much money?" Yang Li shook his head like a rattle drum and said with a bitter face, "If I had that much money, I would have bought the gene fluid a long time ago." "That's right." Lin Feng smiled. His good brother was sometimes muddle-headed. After all, even the worst elemental battle suit was more expensive than the gene fluid. Yang Li laughed foolishly. "Then, Offing, what are you going to buy?" Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he said, "Ancient Martial Arts Sutra." "Oh." Yang Li nodded and looked at Lin Feng in surprise. "Offing, you've changed to an ancient martial artist." "That's right. Why didn't I think of that?" Ancient martial artists can also cross the threshold, although the cultivation speed is slower. "That, Offing, have you already sensed the energy of heaven and earth?" "Yes." Lin Feng answered casually. There were ways to sense the energy of heaven and earth everywhere, and there was no need to pay any price. Whether one could sense the energy of heaven and earth had nothing to do with the grade of the ancient martial arts sutra. It only depended on the talent of the ancient martial artist. "Amazing, it's only been a month." Yang Li clicked his tongue. Many ancient martial artists spend a year or so just sensing the energy of heaven and earth. Some even spend years. "That's right." Lin Feng smiled. Sensing the energy of heaven and earth was indeed a threshold for ancient martial artists. Only by crossing it could one continue to cultivate. More than 90% of the ancient martial arts practitioners would spend a lot of time at the first bottleneck, so it was not surprising that Yang Li thought so. He was already very familiar with the first stage of the Nine Dragon Scripture, and it was easy for him to use it, but his mother had warned him not to expose himself unless he had no other choice. Since he had embarked on the path of an ancient martial artist, he would have to face battles sooner or later. Therefore, this difficult problem had to be solved. The only way was to cultivate another ancient martial arts heart sutra, one that he could take out. Perhaps he might not be able to use his full strength, but at least he could use it openly. After all, combat and cultivation could be separated. An endless stream of people, various kinds of shops, various kinds of bars, amusement centers, and men and women chatting merrily formed the lively atmosphere of the blazing Sun Battle Plaza. No matter how advanced technology was, consumption and demand would always exist. Lin Feng scanned the small, open-air stalls. The items sold here were all different, and the quality was difficult to guarantee. However, there was one advantage, and that was that they were cheap. It was about 20% to 30% cheaper than the regular shops. To the current Lin Feng, every bit of savings was worth it. After all, other than the money left by his elder brother, the family only relied on the meager allowance that his mother earned from knitting. It was fine to live frugally, but it was a little difficult to buy things. "What's wrong, Ollie?" Lin Feng asked when he saw Yang Li looking around. Yang Li frowned slightly and looked around. "I feel like someone is staring at me from behind." Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he smiled indifferently. "Why can't I feel it? You must be mistaken. There are many people here, so it's not surprising that you recognize the wrong person. That's true. Yang Li murmured and nodded. He suddenly grinned and said, Ah Feng, you have always been meticulous and vigilant. If you were really being watched, you would definitely know. When you were young, Fatty Lei and the others always wanted to prank you, but they never succeeded. Yeah, Lin Feng responded and glanced to the right behind him. He then smiled and said, Let's go. I remember that there is a shop selling ancient martial arts heart sutras in front. After saying that, he walked forward with Yang Li. Not long after the two left, a young man dressed in black clothes slowly walked out from the crowd on the right. His eyes flashed with a sharp glint, and the 2-meter-long rod on his back emitted a black metallic luster. Xiao Xiwan, 17 years old. Brain expanse 9. 80%. First class. New weapon, stun baton. Bang, bang, crackle. A cacophony of noises. Angry curses, discussions, and cries converged and resounded in a corner of the blazing Sun Battle Plaza. Lin Feng was choosing ancient martial arts heart sutras when he heard the commotion. He couldn't help but turn his head to look, and his gaze deepened. There were 5 burly men with arms as thick as thighs. They were crude and overbearing, and they wore gray singlets with an eagle's head logo clearly visible on them. 2 of them were smashing the stall, while the other 3 were cursing and kicking an old man and a young man. One could vaguely hear the old man and the young man crying and begging for mercy, but the 3 burly men ignored them. Instead, they viciously cursed and kicked with even more vigor. Layers upon layers of onlookers discussed animatedly, but no one stepped forward to stop them. What was going on? Lin Feng stood up abruptly with a murderous look on his face. Don't. Yang Li immediately grabbed Lin Feng's wrist and whispered, Don't be rash. Lin Feng clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. They even beat the old man. They're worse than pigs and dogs. Although he was furious in his heart, Lin Feng still forcefully suppressed his anger and did not lose his reason. There were too many cases of bullying the weak. Even if he could manage one case, he would not be able to manage 100 or 1,000 of them. Moreover, the current him was simply not qualified to manage it. As long as you don't pay enough protection fees, they will beat up even pregnant women and children, not to mention the old man. The stall owner sighed. Not long ago, a pregnant woman was beaten to the point of miscarriage and almost died. Yang Li frowned and said, The guards don't care. How much can they do? The stall owner said bitterly. The Vulture Gang is mostly made up of local ruffians and hooligans who have nothing to do. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a snake in its old haunts. At most, the guards will catch a few troublemakers. Smashing your stall is a small matter, but if you don't pay the protection fees, we will go to your door tomorrow and smash your house. Lawless. Lin Feng's heart was burning with anger. Sigh, we're just commoners. The stall owner shook his head with a desolate look. Commoners. Lin Feng felt pain in his heart. He knew the status of commoners very well. Today, even if they were beaten up, they would die. The strong preyed on the weak. This was the reality of the world. Geno warriors had special privileges. Ancient warriors had the backing of the Ancient Warrior Alliance. But what about commoners? They had nothing. To put it simply, their lives were cheap and they were the mercy of others. I can't let my mother and sister live like this. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he gritted his teeth. Commoners without any status or power were like ants that could be trampled upon by others. Now, his mother and sister could still be protected by the academy, but in 2 months, as soon as I graduate, I will become a guard of the Jiaoyang district. Lin Feng nodded and made up his mind. Although his brain had regressed, his strength hadn't. It wouldn't be difficult to become a guard of the Jiaoyang district. Perhaps the guards had to deal with a lot of trivial matters, but as long as his mother and sister were safe, sacrificing a little time was nothing. Enter the police district first, then become an ancient warrior as soon as possible. Become a city guard. Lin Feng thought to himself. He already had a clear plan for the future. Although the martial arts gate was good, it was more realistic to become a city guard. The disturbance passed quickly. Before the city guards arrived, the 5 burly men had already left. Although the old man and the young girl were badly injured, their lives weren't in danger. After all, the Condor Gang wasn't stupid. Killing people didn't benefit them at all. They just wanted money. You were beaten half to death, and you still have to thank them for showing mercy. Yang Li shook his head and was speechless. For survival, we have to bow down, Lin Feng said in a low voice. Reality is so cruel. Yang Li sighed. Even if you don't want to do something, there will always be a pair of invisible hands forcing you to do it. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he spoke slowly. He didn't lose his calm, nor did he lose his sense of justice. If it was a year ago, he wouldn't have been able to bear it. But today he was really mature. This year was very precious to Lin Feng. Let's part here, Ollie. Lin Feng waved the 3 books in his hand and smiled. Thank you. They bought a 9th grade Ancient Martial Arts Sutra, a 7th grade Blade Sutra, and an 8th grade Chi Sutra. Yang Li rushed to pay for them. Lin Feng didn't argue and let him do as he pleased. 1 Heart Sutra, 2 Martial Arts Sutra. Although the 2 Martial Arts Sutra were higher in rank, their combined price was lower than the Heart Sutra. Rare things were precious. Moreover, Heart Sutra was more important than Martial Arts Sutra to an ancient martial artist. 170 copper coins is less than 2 silver coins in total. It's nothing, Yang Li said generously. Indeed, the price was less than 1/5 of a bottle of gene fluid. But Lin Feng knew that this money was almost half of Yang Li's wealth. Originally, he only wanted to buy 1 Heart Sutra, but Yang Li was very stubborn and insisted on adding 2 Martial Arts Sutras. If he didn't stop him, Yang Li would probably spend even more. Let's go, my good brother. Yang Li's gaze was deep as he thumped his chest with his right hand. In my heart. After speaking, Yang Li pressed down on the crystal watch on his left hand, and the light projection materialized. He then jumped onto the black floating car and left. Lin Feng looked at Yang Li's departing figure, and a warm feeling rose in his heart. Perhaps Yang Li wasn't good with words, but he was a good brother that he could confide in. Ollie was different from him. With enough gene fluid, he could increase his mind expanse to 2nd grade and have a chance to enter the 3 high-grade genetic academies. His future was bright. Therefore, there were some things that he didn't want him to be involved in. Swish! A cold glint flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. He didn't even turn his head and said indifferently, "Come out." As his voice fell, a black figure slowly walked out from the dark alley behind Lin Feng. He was dressed in plain black clothes, and his weather-beaten face was firm and unyielding. The electric baton on his back was 2 meters long and emitted a black metallic luster, making the darkness even more eerie. Lin Feng turned around, and in his right hand there was a 20-centimeter cylindrical metal alloy. Buzz! As the genetic energy flowed in, the cylindrical metal alloy exploded with resplendent white light. The light pillar condensed and formed a 70-centimeter battle blade. A new weapon, a laser blade. Looking at the black-clothed youth, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. I didn't expect it to be you. Xiao Xiwan was once second only to him in the academy. Now he was the #1 genius in the academy in terms of mind expanse. He was almost half a step into the elite Crown Academy. He believed that it wouldn't be long before he could fuse with the elemental heart and become a true gene warrior. Don't blame me. Xiao Xiwan gritted his teeth, and a hint of struggle could be seen in his eyes. He instantly roared, pulled out his electric baton, and activated it. Buzz! The electric snake spat out its tongue, and the electric baton carried 500 volts of voltage and went straight for Lin Feng. Chapter 7. Far away, on the rooftop of a commoner's building. This Xiao Xiwan isn't stupid after all. He knows to attack when Lin Feng is alone. Lascivious Snake leaned on the railing of the rooftop and smiled casually. You call this not stupid? If it were me, I would have sneaked up on him. Monkey Demon crossed his arms in front of his chest and scoffed. Lascivious Snake laughed. He is the #1 expert in the college. He should have the demeanor of an expert. #1 expert is nothing. Monkey Demon's eyes were filled with disdain as he sneered. He still has to listen to us obediently. Lascivious Snake rubbed his palms, his eyes revealing a lustful light. Wait until this guy gets rid of Lin Feng, then get rid of that dog Yang Li. Then Wang Qian will belong to us 2 brothers. Just thinking about it makes me salivate. Don't be fooled by that chick's innocent looks. She is very promiscuous in bed. Monkey Demon shook his head speechlessly as he sneered. You are really addicted to peeping. Lascivious Snake chuckled as his tiny eyes lit up. He hurriedly shouted, Look, it's starting. Laser Saber versus Stun Baton. The former number 1 genius of the college against the current number 1 expert of the college. Xiao Shiwan struck first and gained the upper hand. 500 volts of electricity accompanied the afterimages of the staff. Instantly, it was as though countless electric snakes were spitting out their red tongues as they attacked. With a mind expanse of 80%, Xiao Shiwan's strength lived up to its name. Just his rank 2 staff arts alone was enough to dominate the college. But this time his opponent was Lin Feng, who had reached rank 2 saber arts 3 years ago. D8 Neo Martial Art, Sunset Saber 20%. Lin Feng took a step forward. Compared to Xiao Shiwan's solemn expression, his saber was simple and direct, as though it was made by nature. The laser saber slashed down from the top right, drawing a perfect straight line as though it could split space into 2 right triangles. Instantly, Xiao Shiwan's staff afterimages dissipated. Although the stun baton's energy was in no way inferior to the white laser, Xiao Shiwan was instantly at a disadvantage. How is this possible? Xiao Shiwan, who was forced back by a single move, was shocked. His hands that were holding the stun baton trembled slightly. This was one of his strongest attacks, and he had the initiative to attack. Not only did he not gain the slightest advantage, he was suppressed by Lin Feng. Impossible. How is that possible? Xiao Shiwan was not the only one who was shocked. In the distance, the 2 people who were originally calm and composed on the roof were also dumbfounded. I thought his genes were damaged? Lascivious Snake stuttered. How can Lin Feng still use Neo martial arts? Monkey Spirit's face was pale, and he was dumbfounded. Genetic damage? That was just a rumor spread by the outside world. Indeed, Lin Feng had never denied it, but he had never admitted it either. Some things didn't need to be explained. Clang! The light from a laser saber grew stronger, and Lin Feng's calm expression became more serious. With a step and a leap, he was like a vigorous cheetah. Even Lin Feng himself was a little surprised by his explosive speed. His arms shook, and the laser saber instantly formed 2 intersecting saber lights. Sunset Knife, 50%. Lin Feng's eyes shone. In the void, a huge X appeared suddenly, which made Xiao Shiwan's face turn pale. E3 Neo Martial Arts. Iron Wall, 100%. Xiao Shiwan gritted his teeth and roared. Lightning surged out and instantly formed an impenetrable wall in front of him. From attack to defense, it only took an instant. There is no need to say much about the difference in strength between the 2 sides, but in the next instant, bang, Xiao Shiwan's eyes widened, and his heart seemed to stop beating. The iron wall in front of him collapsed instantly. He saw the dazzling white light coming from the sky, and a huge force hit his chest. Puff! The stun baton in his hand flew out, and Xiao Shiwan fell heavily to the ground. Hua! A figure appeared instantly. Hiss! The laser knife was placed on Xiao Shiwan's neck. Lin Feng looked down at this youth, who came from a poor background like himself. He only needed to spit out the laser to turn him into a corpse. He was never his enemy. Although they didn't interact in school, they didn't have any grudges. Pa! The light from the knife disappeared, and the laser knife in Lin Feng's hand turned back into a cylindrical alloy. You can go, Lin Feng said calmly. Xiao Shiwan was stunned. His eyes were filled with struggle and regret. He clenched his left fist and trembled. I'm sorry. Xiao Shiwan covered his chest with his right hand. He lowered his head and didn't even dare to look at Lin Feng. He picked up the stun baton and disappeared into the dark alley. Looking at the lonely back, Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he sighed in his heart. He was also a commoner, but he was more unfortunate than him. His parents died early, and his only family was his younger brother who was 4 years younger than him. He was about to graduate and enter Crown Elite Academy. He had finally made it. What could make such a genius take such a huge risk and destroy his future just to kill him. Lin Feng knew clearly, because they were the same type of people. On the rooftop of the commoner's building. Lost, Xiao Shiwan lost. Lascivious Snake was completely petrified. His eyes widened in disbelief. He lost, but we haven't lost yet. Monkey Demon's eyes were filled with viciousness. The crystal watch in his left hand was pointed at Lin Feng. He said sternly, "As long as Lin Feng kills Xiao Shiwan, he will have violated the rules of the school. Hand this video evidence to the school, and he will be dead." Yes, yes, yes. Lascivious Snake agreed. He found hope again. Kill. Why don't you kill him? Monkey Demon was furious. He wanted to stab Lin Feng in the back. Lascivious Snake held his breath. His chest rose and fell rapidly. But soon, his and Monkey Demon's expressions changed from hope to disappointment, because Lin Feng let Xiao Shiwan go just like that. Damn it! The monkey's spirit slammed the railing angrily. This cowardly bandit! A sharp light flashed in the monkey spirit's eyes as he gritted his teeth. If you don't want to kill them, we will kill them for you. With this video, Lin Feng won't be able to clear his name even if he jumps into the Yellow River. Just wait to go to jail. At this moment, dang, 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 Lascivious Snake retreated in horror. His face was pale, as if he had seen the devil. What? Monkey Demon was in a bad mood. Lascivious Snake pointed afar and said in shock, "He seems to have seen me." "Who saw you?" Monkey Demon was impatient, but he suddenly reacted. His eyes widened, and he grabbed Lascivious Snake. He said nervously, "You said Lin Feng saw you? We're so far away. How could he notice us? Ridiculous." Although he said this, Monkey Demon's lips were pale. His heart was a mess. He hurriedly activated the crystal watch in his left hand. Buzz! The light projection condensed into a solid object. A brown magnetic hover car appeared on the roof. "Go!" Monkey Demon shouted and jumped into the car. Lascivious Snake woke up from his dream and quickly jumped in as well. The magnetic hover car started, but Monkey Demon and Lascivious Snake opened their eyes wide in shock. In front of them was a figure they didn't want to see the most. "Where do you want to go?" Lin Feng asked calmly. His eyes flashed. Chi. Genetic energy flowed into the alloy body. A laser blade was formed instantly. It emitted a bright white light and a murderous aura. It was like the voice of the Grim Reaper. Monkey Demon and Lascivious Snake were completely stunned. They didn't expect Lin Feng to arrive so quickly. They also didn't expect Lin Feng's strength to be so terrifying. Xiao Shiwan, who was known as the strongest person in the school, couldn't even block 2 moves from Lin Feng. Run! Lin Feng's appearance meant that the matter had been exposed. Monkey Demon gritted his teeth and made a prompt decision. The magnetic hover car started to reverse rapidly, smashing through the railing. At this moment, he couldn't care less. Monkey Demon's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. There was no place to lean on in midair. As long as they ran fast enough, Lin Feng wouldn't be able to catch up. But D8 Neo Martial Art, Sunset Blade, 50%. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The moment the magnetic hover car started, the laser blade was already swung out. A large amount of genetic energy flowed into the laser blade. Lin Feng's arm shook violently. In an instant, a huge X condensed with astonishing laser energy and directly cut the magnetic hover car apart, causing the magnetic energy to explode. Boom! 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 The magnetic hover car exploded into pieces in midair. Monkey Demon and Lascivious Snake screamed and fell from a height of 30 meters. Lin Feng also jumped up at the same time. He stepped lightly on the water pipe to reduce the force and fell down in a trapezoidal shape. Boom! Boom! With 2 loud sounds, Monkey Demon and Lascivious Snake smashed 2 large holes in the grass. Although both of them had elemental battle suits, it was difficult to form a complete defense in the magnetic hover car. The residual power of the laser blade, the power of the magnetic explosion, and the huge impact of falling from a height of 30 meters. The 3 added together wasn't something an elemental battle suit could withstand. Lin Feng landed lightly, his eyes burning. Lascivious Snake's neck twisted strangely. He had already died, but Monkey Demon's body was still trembling and twitching. Chi! The laser blade flashed with a cold light. Lin Feng directly cut off Monkey Demon's last chance of survival. His eyes were filled with hatred and unwillingness, but they were no longer spirited. When cutting grass, you have to remove the roots. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble. Lin Feng had always remembered his elder brother's teachings. He bent down, took the crystal watch from Monkey Demon's hand, and activated it. In an instant, countless light beams shot out from the crystal watch, forming a three-dimensional projection. Lin Feng's eyes were clear. The projection showed the fierce battle between him and Xiao Shiwan. The plan is indeed very thorough. Lin Feng's left hand flashed with genetic energy. With a pa sound, he directly crushed the crystal watch. Boom! With a wave of the laser blade in his right hand, the crystal watch on Lascivious Snake's left wrist was also crushed. All the evidence was destroyed. Lin Feng's gaze landed on their elemental battle suits. Even after such a strong attack, they were only slightly damaged. As expected of a technological product that was more valuable than gene fluids. However, he couldn't take it. The elemental battle suit had a unique computer code. If he took it, it would be a hot potato. The explosion of the magnetic hover car was too loud. I believe that this place will be discovered soon. Lin Feng thought to himself and looked around. Fortunately, this was the civilian district. There were no guard patrolling, and there were no sky eyes watching. Otherwise, there would be a lot of trouble. But now, there was no need to worry. Having lived in the civilian district since young, Lin Feng was too familiar with the environment here. Someone died? In the chaotic civilian district, this wasn't news at all. Putting away the laser blade, Lin Feng's figure quickly disappeared from this dark area. Chapter 8. 2 minutes after Lin Feng left. We're rich, Brother Long. There are 2 corpses over there. F***CK off. What's the point of seeing corpses? I'm going to the casino. What bad luck. No, Brother Long. Those 2 corpses have the legendary elemental battle suits. F***CK, are you serious? At this time, Lin Feng had already left this area. Lin Feng did not have much thoughts about the elemental battle suits. Galloping through this fantastical and magnificent metal forest, Lin Feng's expression was solemn. He knew very well what today's events meant. If his strength had been slightly weaker, the ones who died today would not have been Monkey Demon and Lascivious Snake, but himself. Strength is the foundation of everything. Without strength, there is no status. In this world, you will be at the mercy of others. Lin Feng's mind flashed back to what he saw at the Blazing Sun battle square. He still could not let it go. If today's events happened to him, and the ones who were bullied and humiliated were his mother and sister, what would happen? Thinking of this, Lin Feng felt a heart-wrenching pain. I must become a strong person like Big Brother. Lin Feng clenched his teeth and clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug deep into his palms. Back home, Lin Feng went straight to the training room, passed the guard exam. At present, Lin Feng was very clear about his goal. Passing the guard exam was not difficult for him. Guards were part of the military's external system and had a strict hierarchy. Ordinary police officers, senior police officers, sheriff, district sheriff, and so on. In addition to seniority, strength was an important factor in promoting the guard rank. The higher the guard rank, the better the benefits and the higher the status. This was very important. 3 months to become a sheriff, 9 months to be promoted to a district sheriff. The monthly salary of a district sheriff is 10 silver coins. I can take some missions and join an adventurer team to hunt in the wilderness. I can ensure that my sister can cultivate at the best speed and improve her brain. Lin Feng thought to himself. Although he wanted to join the martial arts sect, passing the guard exam was not a bad choice. After becoming a guard, I won't have much time to train. Lin Feng sat cross-legged and took a deep breath to calm his mind. I'll seize the last 2 months of cultivation to raise my mind expanse. With this thought in mind, Lin Feng quickly entered a meditative state. As the 9-dragon scripture was activated, the rich energy of heaven and earth once again gathered. In Jiayang district, there was a luxurious garden house with beautiful scenery. Young master. An old man dressed as a butler bowed. Uncle Wong, did you find anything? Sure Wen Long was half naked, lying on the massage chair with his eyes closed. There were two beautiful young girls massaging him attentively on his left and right sides, and the air was filled with the charming fragrance of wine. Reporting to young master, the preliminary investigation at the police station is a robbery case. Uncle Wong said respectfully. Robbery? Sure Wen Long opened his eyes in confusion. Yes, through the elemental battlesuit code that young master provided, the guards followed the clues and caught a few hooligans with the nickname Brother Long. They are suspected to have shot down the magnetic hover car and robbed it. Such cases are common in the Commoner District, and there will always be people who take the risk. Uncle Wong's voice was hoarse. Is that so? Sure Wen Long sneered and looked at Uncle Wong. What do you think? In my humble opinion, there are many suspicious points in this case. It might be more appropriate to call it a vendetta. Unfortunately, the guards only act according to the evidence, so the hooligans led by Brother Long are unlucky. Uncle Wong said slowly, and according to young master, this matter is very likely done by Lin Feng and Yang Li. It should be Yang Li. Sure Wen Long's eyes flashed. Lin Feng is just a cripple now. Uncle Wong said hoarsely, according to the computer data, Yang Li does have the strength to do so, but they are very clean. They even destroyed the crystal watch, so there is no evidence. Oof. Sure Wen Long sneered. They are not stupid. Uncle Wong hesitated for a moment, then said, because two students died, this matter has attracted the attention of the academy and has been investigated. In order to avoid being involved in disputes and affecting the graduation exam in 2 months, I hope that young master can stay at home and cultivate in peace. Sure Wen Long's face turned cold, and his eyes widened. They killed my people, and I'm just going to let it go like this? Let me, Sure Wen Long, show my face in the future. Uncle Wong said seriously. Master attaches great importance to young master's graduation exam. I hope that young master will take it seriously and not disappoint master. This old servant has already looked at Lin Feng's background. There is no hurry to deal with him. Let's wait for him to leave the academy in 2 months. At that time, if you want to kill him, you could do it with a single word from young master. Hearing this, Sure Wen Long raised his eyebrows and nodded in satisfaction. What he said made sense. Killing a commoner was much easier and safer than killing a student. I'll listen to you, Uncle Wong. Sure Wen Long smiled coldly, closed his eyes, and continued to enjoy the pleasure of the massage. I'll let Lin Feng live for another 2 months. At that time, I'll take care of him slowly. Autumn left and winter came. Stepping into the cold winter meant that he was 1 step closer to graduation. On December 1st, Lin Feng gave the last bottle of gene fluid to Yang Li, then immediately returned to the cultivation room to continue his seclusion. Lin Feng knew very well that he had started much slower than others, since he only started cultivating as an ancient martial artist at the age of 17. If he wanted to catch up with that time, then he would have to work 10 times harder than others. With a firm belief and astonishing perseverance, Lin Feng continued to move towards his goal. I want to become an ancient martial artist as soon as possible. This was Lin Feng's only thought. Right now, he wished that he could use 1 hour instead of 10. As for the graduation exam on January 1st, Lin Feng didn't care at all. That exam was specially set up for the outstanding geniuses in the academy. He used to be one, but now he was not. 2 months passed quickly. Fireworks were set off in the blazing Sun Battle Plaza. Countless people were shouting the countdown to the new year in unison. A huge screen was playing a colorful animation. The Wheel of Time had officially turned from War Martial Era 101 to War Martial Era 102. January 1st, the day to welcome the new year in. This is the last time. Lin Feng walked on the gravel road of the academy, looking at the new and beautiful teaching buildings, floating magnetic fortresses, and capsule houses around him. His eyes flickered, and all that was left was nostalgia. Today was the last time he entered this place as a student. 6 years had passed in a flash, and here there were too many memories. From an ignorant little boy, he had grown up to the current him. There were joys and hardships, happiness and sorrow. 10th grade genius? Lin Feng smiled indifferently. He could still hear all kinds of gossip and strange gazes, but his heart was as calm as water. He had already endured such a heavy blow a year ago. Why would he care about what others thought of him? The cultivation path of an ancient martial artist has been relatively smooth for the past 3 months. It's just that there are some obstacles in the later stages. I wonder if my mind expanse has increased, and by how much? 5, 3%, 4%, or maybe a little higher? Lin Feng smiled and stepped on a magnetic suspension stairs in front of him. According to the cultivation path he had taken, his mind expanse would increase by 1% to 2% annually. Of course, the cultivation speed at the beginning would naturally be faster. However, the cultivation speed of an ancient martial artist was much slower than that of a genetic warrior. Although he had used up all his time in the past 3 months, it was probably not even half as efficient as when he absorbed the gene fluid. It's fine as long as there's an increase, even if it's only 1%. Lin Feng walked up step by step, feeling very relaxed. Only students who applied for the 3 high-grade genetic academies would pay attention to the graduation exam. To him, it was actually very simple. He just had to go through the process, complete the exam, and endure the ridicule at the end. Then, like the majority of the students, he would apply for the Jiaoyang District Guards. What the guards cared about wasn't mind expanse, but actual combat ability. Lin Feng was very confident in his actual combat ability. I'm here. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. At the end of the magnetic suspension stairs was a semi-elliptical magnetic fortress. It was constructed with a shiny metal frame and tempered glass. It was like a huge fortress and was the crystallization of modern technology. It floated high in the air, but was as stable as Mount Tai. Mind Expanse Testing Center. D. After scanning his palm print, Lin Feng confirmed his identity. Palm prints were more complicated and precise than fingerprints. Oh, so many people. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Looking around, it was densely packed with people. Every year at this time, he would watch the other students graduate. This year, it was finally his turn. Currently, the most lively area in the testing center was undoubtedly the 2 VIP stands on the left and right. The 2 VIPs would only appear on the 1st of January every year. Setting Sun City Genetic Academy. Lin Feng's gaze swept past the VIP stand on the right and finally landed on the left. The teachers of the Elite Crown Academy were seated there. They had their hands crossed in front of their chests, and arrogance could be seen on their faces. Their cold expressions formed a stark contrast with the teachers of the Setting Sun City Genetic Academy. Of the 3 high-grade genetic academies in Setting Sun City, the one ranked first was indeed the Elite Crown Academy. However, in recent years, the Setting Sun City Genetic Academy had been trying to catch up. The gap between them was getting smaller and smaller. The competition between the 2 high-grade genetic academies was very intense. Naturally, this included the fight for talents. Often, a joyful and loud voice rang out. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly. Yang Li's loud voice instantly attracted everyone's attention. However, he didn't notice anything and was waving his hands vigorously. Smiling helplessly, Lin Feng walked over. Look, it's that Lin Feng. It's true. He actually came to take the test again. Doesn't he feel that he hasn't lost enough face previously? Are you an idiot? Today is the graduation test. How can he not come? Even if his brain domain regresses and his genes are damaged, we know that, but others don't. When the time comes, he can at least earn a living with the graduation certificate of the academy. It's better than those ancient martial artists who can't break through the boundary. Such a genius. What a pity. A bunch of gossipy women. Yang Li glared at the surrounding students. Their mouths are on their bodies. We can't do anything about it. Let them be. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Yang Li snorted. They can only show off their superiority now. When they leave the academy, they'll be guards for the rest of their lives. After 6 years in the academy, one could tell whether one was a dragon or a snake. Those with aptitude and potential wouldn't be buried. For people like Xiao Xuan, even if his family was poor, he was still outstanding. For people like Yang Li, there was still hope for the future. However, most of the students would be like this for the rest of their lives. Becoming a genetic warrior was already their limit. What about you? Lin Feng smiled and asked, has your mind expanse broken through 9%? It's not a big problem. Yang Li patted his chest and was full of confidence. If I can't reach second-class mind expanse with this, I would have let down the 3 bottles of gene fluid that you sponsored, offing. That's good. Lin Feng's gaze landed on the 2 VIP stands. They were filled with people, especially around the Sunset City Genetic Academy's teachers. There were many students asking questions, and one of them was a familiar figure. It was Shi Wenlong. Shi Wenlong, who had always been arrogant and condescending, had a flattering smile on his face. He looked like his 2 lackeys. Aren't you going to worm your way into being friends with them? Lin Feng asked. My mind expanse has just entered the 2nd class at best. How could she possibly fancy me? Yang Li was at ease. The old man always taught me that it's important to know one's own limits. What's the point of wagging my tail and begging like a pug? After the graduation test ends, I will apply for the Battle Academy. Battle Academy. The 3 high-grade genetic academies were ranked last. Every year, the Elite Crown Academy and the Sunset City Genetic Academy would compete for the good seedlings with first-class mind expanse. After that, they would select some students with second-class mind expanse. The remaining students with second-class mind expanse would apply for the Battle Academy and undergo a strict selection process. This was already the norm. Are you confident? Lin Feng asked. Nope. Yang Li was like a deflated rubber ball. His face was filled with worry. There are a total of 60 districts in the Sunset City, including the students from the Sunset City main city. There are over 400 people applying for the Battle Academy every year. However, only 100 people are accepted. There's an 80% elimination rate. 80%. As he spoke, he kept shaking his head. Yang Li was indeed lacking in confidence. Lin Feng knew Yang Li's concerns. However, he couldn't blame him. In the Jiaoyang district, Yang Li had just crossed the threshold and was almost at the bottom. There was no need for all the students from the Sunset City to apply for the Battle Academy. Only 100 people would be accepted out of 400 people. An 80% elimination rate was indeed cruel. However, one could achieve anything with effort. The 3 great advanced genetic academies. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as a trace of desire appeared in his heart. If he could enter one of them, not only would he be able to receive guidance from a mentor, but he would also receive countless resources and an excellent training environment. Even the basic benefits would be 2 bottles of gene fluid every month. The treatment was excellent. However, all of this had long become like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. He had no fate with them. The flicker in Lin Feng's eyes turned into a bright light. It disappeared in a flash, and a relieved smile appeared on his face. He had already let it go. At this moment, the testing center's door opened once again, causing a series of exclamations. Lin Feng looked over and saw a middle-aged man with a dignified aura. His sideburns were slightly white, and his steel-like muscles were frightening. His bronze Geno armor was domineering. As he walked with his head held high, the aura of a strong warrior surged. He was like a male lion. Dean Shi. Lin Feng's heart trembled. He stood there with a straight face, and a look of reverence and respect could be seen between his brows. Dean Shi. He was the legend and pride of the Jiaoyang district. He was also the strong warrior that the students talked about the most and respected the most. His appearance instantly became the center of attention. The originally noisy testing center became so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Even the arrogant mentor from the Elite Crown Academy stood there solemnly. Behind Dean Shi, Yin Rushuang, Li Meng, 7 other mentors, and tens of instructors followed closely. It was a huge scene. Dean Shi, the mentors from the Elite Crown Academy and the Sunset City Genetic Academy, bowed respectfully. Dean Shi responded casually. He walked like a lion king, exuding a domineering aura as he strode past the 2 of them. His appearance meant that the graduation examination of the Jiaoyang District's Beginner Genetic Academy had officially begun. Chapter 9. Lei Meng, Brain Expanse 7. 96%, Grade 5, Instructor Evaluation, C5. Wu Dachuan, Brain Expanse 8. 14%, Grade 4, Instructor Evaluation, C8. Jimin, Brain Expanse 7. 51%, Grade 5, Instructor Evaluation, B9. Yi Tianlong, Brain Expanse 8. 77%, Grade 3, Instructor Evaluation, D1. Following the dean's concise speech, the graduation examination began. Students were given their graduation certificates according to their serial numbers. For students who were unable to enter the 3 major high-grade genetic academies, the graduation certificate from Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy was very useful. It could provide better employment opportunities. It's quite similar to the previous era, Lin Feng said softly in his heart. Influenced by his elder brother, Lin Feng was also fond of history. Although times had changed and many things had changed, the footprints of humanity wouldn't be erased because of this. Today, many models continued from the previous era, extracting the essence and discarding the dross. Please bless me. Instructor Evaluation, B9 and above. Yang Li clasped his hands together and prayed nonstop. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh at his pious appearance. He joked, "Are you praying to Bodhisattva or Instructor Yin?" Shoo shoo shoo. Stop making sarcastic remarks. Yang Li curled his lips. Of course you don't mind. Who doesn't know that Instructor Yin likes you the most? Her evaluation definitely won't be low. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Ollie was indeed inconsiderate at times, making others not know whether to laugh or cry. Instructor evaluations were very important. This was a comprehensive evaluation and had nothing to do with brain expanse. Simply put, it was an evaluation of a student's performance in the academy for the past 6 years. This evaluation was directly related to a student's promotion in the military system. Some students with poor evaluations wouldn't be accepted by the military system even if they were strong enough. The military system was particular about discipline and obedience. Even the guards were considered part of the military system, but strictly speaking, they were not part of the system. While they were talking, Tao Jing, Brain Expanse 9. 25%, Grade 2, Instructor Evaluation, B5. The instructor's voice calmly sounded. It was less cold and more warm. To the academy, only students with a Grade 2 brain expanse and above were considered to have graduated. As for the rest, it was just their time in the academy had come to an end. Lin Feng looked ahead. It was a girl with delicate features and a ponytail. Her figure was slightly thin. Of course, he recognized Tao Jing, although they didn't talk much. This girl usually trained very hard and didn't like to talk to others. It wasn't that she was cold, but that she was a little timid and shy. Even her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. However, her personality was actually very good. This could be seen from the high B5 evaluation that Instructor Yin gave her. Tao Jing had received the highest evaluation among all the students who had completed the graduation assessment. Furthermore, he was the first student whose mind expanse exceeded 9% and achieved a second-grade evaluation. But there was still complete silence. Lin Feng's gaze landed on the mind expanse tester. This time, the mind expanse tester had an additional pair of arms. On the front was a screen, and facing all the students were 2 sun lamps. They did not use solar energy, but when they lit up, they were as red as the sun. It was blinding. 2 sun lamps were placed on the left and right. They were connected to the fluorescent consoles in front of the 2 teachers from Crown Elite Academy and Sunset City Genetic Academy. As long as the sun lamp was lit up, both parties could negotiate. Otherwise, everything would be for naught. Disappointment. Tao Jing bit her lips so hard that the skin broke. She held back her tears, and her frail body trembled slightly. Different from others, Tao Jing had high hopes of entering the 2 high-grade genetic academies. But in the end, she still lost. Even so, Tao Jing still bowed deeply to the 2 teachers before leaving. It's a pity. Lin Feng saw this and had a good impression of Tao Jing's actions. However, the 2 high-grade genetic academies had limited slots. It wasn't easy for someone with a second-grade mind expanse to enter. I already said that there's no hope. Yang Li mumbled. He moved closer to Lin Feng and whispered, "Do you know why the two high-grade genetic academies sent teachers instead of instructors? They are all eyeing Xiao Shiwan. It's difficult for others to be selected. As long as you have the heart, there will always be a suitable path." Lin Feng looked at Tao Jing's frail and lonely back view and said softly. Yang Li raised his eyebrows and joked, "Can I take this as sour grapes?" Lin Feng was stunned and reacted quickly. He dared Ali to think that he was talking about himself. He smiled and said, "If you say so." "Huh." Yang Li grinned and winked. "I'm just joking. From what I see, it's the Crown Elite Academy's greatest loss that day that they didn't accept you. Xiao Shiwan is nothing compared to you, often. I dare to guarantee that in the future, the Crown Elite Academy will regret it so much that their intestines will turn green." "Is that so?" Lin Feng smiled and pointed to the front. "At the very least, he's a hot potato now. Mine expanse 9, 88%. Hua hua." Two dazzling red sun lamps lit up at almost the same time, illuminating the entire testing center. The tempered glass in the surroundings was like a red-hot soldering iron. Cries of surprise and envy rang out from all directions. Every student was anxiously waiting, their hearts filled with an incomparable desire. This was the treatment of a genius. Two high-grade genetic academies were fighting over him at the same time. So what if he was born poor? Everyone knew that Xiao Shiwan's future was limitless. No matter which high-grade genetic academy he entered, he would become a dragon among men in the future. His tattered black clothes would be replaced by expensive Geno armor, and his mended cloth shoes would become Geno battle boots. His family would benefit from this, too. They would no longer be commoners. "Damn, I knew it." Yang Li mumbled, his eyes red. It was unknown if it was because of the sun lamps or because he was jealous. The treatment should be pretty good. Lin Feng looked to the front. At this moment, the two screens beside Xiao Shiwan should be displaying the sincerity of the two high-grade genetic academies. Simply put, it was about the benefits. Xiao Shiwan would choose whichever school had better conditions and more sincerity. Tao Jing couldn't even get the lowest qualification to enter, but Xiao Shiwan could choose better benefits as he wished. This was the difference in the breadth of one's mind. It was an insurmountable gap between a second-grade genius and a first-grade genius. No matter how good it is, it can't be compared to offing's benefits when you were recruited in advance. However, it's enough. Yang Li turned his head and let out a long sigh. Comparisons are odious. It was unknown if he was talking about himself or Lin Feng. Ha! One of the sun lamps was extinguished. Sunset City Genetic Academy. Lin Feng glanced to the left. The teacher from the Elite Crown Academy had a look of astonishment on his face. His expression instantly turned ashen. The teacher from the Sunset City Genetic Academy on the right smiled with a hint of satisfaction. The two high-grade genetic academies had always been competing both openly and secretly. The Sunset City Genetic Academy has been developing very quickly in recent years and seems to be catching up. It's true, Lin Feng thought to himself. Although Xiao Shiwan's choice seemed difficult, it was actually very simple. The benefits of both parties were fixed. Naturally, it depended on which side had better conditions. Clearly, the Elite Crown Academy had lost, and if they lost the first time, they might lose the second time as well. Not long after Xiao Shiwan, another first-grade genius appeared, Xiang Yang, whose mind breadth had reached 9. 51%, was ranked second in the Elite Crown Academy, second only to Xiao Shiwan. As expected, the teacher from the Sunset City Genetic Academy smiled again. Damn, Shi Wenlong has a chance. Yang Li opened his eyes wide. Lin Feng nodded. Shi Wenlong's mind breadth was ranked third in the Elite Crown Academy. Although it was only second grade, it was very close to first grade. The two high-grade genetic academies had a quota limit. Similar to the Battle Academy, they could only recruit 100 people each year. Recruiting 2 people in one district had already exceeded the quota. If the Elite Crown Academy and the Sunset City Genetic Academy were to recruit 1 person each, they would probably retreat. But now, the Elite Crown Academy didn't even have a quota, Look at how proud that guy is. Yang Li pursed his lips. Although this was what he said, Lin Feng could hear a tinge of jealousy in his tone. If one could enter the elite Crown Academy easily, who would be willing to risk their lives to fight for a spot in the Battle Academy? Moreover, the Battle Academy was far from the elite Crown Academy in terms of reputation and strength. Shi Wenlong, Mind Breath 9. 39%, second grade. The instructor's voice rang out. Lin Feng glanced at Shi Wenlong's confident face and looked at the elite Crown Academy's teacher. He could see that he was hesitating. Although he knew that the elite Crown Academy rarely recruited second-grade geniuses, that was then and this was now. If they missed out on Shi Wenlong, the elite Crown Academy's trip this time would be in vain. Teacher evaluation, D9. The instructor's face showed some hesitation, but he still reported it truthfully. Shock. A look of astonishment appeared on their faces, including the elite Crown Academy's teacher, all the students, and even Shi Wenlong himself. His handsome face turned green and white, and in an instant it was flushed red. The evaluation of a D9 teacher was definitely the lowest in the academy. In other words, Teacher Yin's evaluation of Shi Wenlong couldn't be any worse. Yang Li's face was flushed red. He covered his mouth and tried his best to hold back his laughter. Lin Feng was also amused, looking at Shi Wenlong's pale face, and then looking at the elite Crown Academy's mentor. He had already crossed his arms and closed his eyes. Indeed, the elite Crown Academy's quota had not been reached. However, this didn't mean that they had to accept a student with poor character. Moreover, Shi Wenlong's aptitude had not reached the psychological standards of the elite Crown Academy. Ha! Ha ha ha! Not sure who started laughing, but in an instant, the entire hall was filled with laughter. This made Shi Wenlong, who was already flushed red, want to find a hole to hide in. He had never been so embarrassed before. What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? Shi Wenlong roared. However, his voice and expression were as though he was struggling. It was of no use. Yang Li was undoubtedly the one who laughed the loudest. Lin Feng also smiled slightly. Ever since that nightmarish year, he had not been so happy for a long time. Shi Wenlong was like an enraged wild beast, roaring and glaring. When he landed on the side of Lin Feng and Yang Li, he was so angry that his teeth were about to shatter. Damn pauper! Shi Wenlong's veins were bulging and his eyes were about to pop out. Don't be so happy. After today, you can just wait for your death. Towards Lin Feng, Shi Wenlong already had the intention to kill him. The laughter lasted for close to a minute before it slowly subsided. Although the graduation examination continued, to the two teachers of the elite Crown Academy and Sunset City Genetic Academy, it had already ended. They had already seen the general information of this batch of students. Other than Xiao Xuan, Xiang Yang, Shi Wenlong, and Tao Jing, there were no other good seedlings. If it wasn't for Dean Shi, the two of them would have left long ago. Yang Li, Brain Expanse 9. 3%, Grade 2, Teacher Evaluation, B8. The instructor's voice rang out. Yang Li clenched his fists excitedly, unable to conceal his agitation. The difference between Grade 3 and Grade 2 was like heaven and earth. Having a Grade 2 brain expanse meant that he could apply for a combat academy. Regardless of whether he succeeded in the end, it was at least a chance. And what made Yang Li the happiest was his teacher evaluation of B8. This made him even more excited than having a Grade 2 brain expanse. Although he didn't receive the favor of the two advanced academies, Yang Li was already satisfied. Dodge asterisk T-Luck. Shi Wenlong's eyes flashed fiercely. He was very unhappy. Yang Li walked past Shi Wenlong and flexed his arm muscles to show off. He laughed loudly, angering Shi Wenlong so much that his whole body was trembling. Next, number 32, Lin Feng. At this moment, the instructor's voice rang out. The students who were discussing Yang Li's results suddenly stopped. Pairs of eyes immediately gathered, including Shi Wenlong's cold eyes. He let out a disdainful snort. Everyone's attention was on him. It could be said that Lin Feng's attention was even higher than Xiao Xuan's. Wow, a grade 10 genius. A 5% brain expanse. Even my mom is better than him. Do you think he will regress into an idiot this time? Unbridled laughter was mixed with all sorts of mockery and ridicule. Such was human nature. Even if they were trampled on with words, it would still give them satisfaction and a sense of superiority. However, Lin Feng's expression remained the same, unperturbed. To him, Lin Feng wasn't demanding too much. As long as his brain expanse could exceed 5%, it would prove that he could continue on the path of an ancient martial artist. Lin Feng was already satisfied. Buzz, the brain expanse tester, landed steadily on Lin Feng's head and emitted an electromagnetic glow. All the students widened their eyes and held back their laughter as they watched the numbers appear on the screen. Especially those students who didn't see Lin Feng with their own eyes 3 months ago. They were looking forward to seeing him make a fool of himself. 3 months ago, Lin Feng had created an unprecedented record. The title of Grade 10 Genius spread like wildfire. What about this time? Chapter 10. There was complete silence. The smiles of the students who were waiting to see a joke froze in that instant. Did they see wrongly? Many students stood rooted to the ground, their mouths wide open. Some rubbed their eyes and looked at the screen in disbelief. Shi Wenlong was like a dumbfounded goose, his eyes dilated. Even mentor Yin Rushuang was shocked. The instructor in charge of the test was completely stunned. The two mentors from Elite Crown Academy and Sunset City Genetic Academy had a myriad of changes in their expressions. Their brains short-circuited. Suddenly, Hua, a resplendent red light flashed. The sun lamp on the left emitted a bright light, once again lighting up the entire test center. The two mentors from Elite Crown Academy and Sunset City Genetic Academy had different expressions. The mentor from Elite Crown Academy was overjoyed, while the mentor from Sunset City Genetic Academy was frowning. He wanted to press the control button, but after hesitating for a moment, he chose to give up. He had already exceeded the quota. Even if he wanted to snatch the test, Lin Feng could only offer the most ordinary conditions. He would definitely not be able to win against Elite Crown Academy. Even Lin Feng himself couldn't regain his senses. His first thought was exactly the same as the majority of the students. The brain expanse tester must be broken, right? However, Lin Feng calmed down very quickly. Such a high-tech instrument was extremely accurate. It was only broken when it was his turn to test it. Moreover, the chances of it being broken were very low. This point could be seen from the fact that the mentors and instructors were shocked but didn't check the instrument. My brain expanse tester has recovered. Lin Feng was both surprised and happy. He suddenly felt that fate was playing tricks on him. During the test 3 months ago, his brain expanse tester had fallen to the freezing point. His brain expanse tester was even worse than the students who had just entered the school. He was known as a 10th grade genius in the school. However, after just 3 months, his brain expanse tester had recovered miraculously? No, it's not recovered. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. His brain expanse tester hadn't recovered even after an entire year. Yet, it had recovered after 3 months as an ancient martial artist? Wasn't this too far-fetched? It's no wonder that the absorption of heaven-earth energy seems to have encountered a blockage recently, slowing down significantly. So it's because my mind expanse is about to reach a critical point. Lin Feng thought to himself. At that moment, his doubts were gone. He was still wondering if there was a problem with his cultivation, but he never expected that his mind expanse was reaching a bottleneck. It was indeed too inconceivable. Even if he told others, no one would believe it. 3 months, just 3 months of cultivating the ancient martial arts sutra. His mind expanse went from 0% to 90%. It was more than terrifying. I've been cultivating arduously since I was 12. I soaked in gene fluid and spent more than 4 years to raise my brain expanse to the critical line. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart was in a perilous situation. He was extremely shocked. Even someone as talented as Big Brother still spent a full 3 years. What about now? It had only taken 3 months. Phew. Exhaling a long breath, Lin Feng shook his head as the strange and bizarre little ball in his dantian appeared in his mind. He shook his head. What was going on? Was there a reason he didn't know? There was no way he could know now. Lin Feng's gaze landed in front of him. Shocked faces were looking at him as though they were looking at a monster. Crown Elite Academy. Lin Feng's gaze immediately landed on the screen in front of him. The red glow of the sun lamp reflected on the screen clearly. At the top of the screen were the words special benefits. All the terms were listed clearly. To him, these were all too familiar. 1. Any category D9 grade elemental heart. 2. 1 beginner level gene nutrition cabin for bottles of gene fluid per month. 3. D9 grade Geno armor, 1 set of Geno boots. A year ago, Lin Feng had seen it before. However, it wasn't a special benefit, but an exclusive benefit. Every student that was recruited in advance had different aptitudes and talents, and they would enjoy different exclusive benefits. The exclusive benefits were much better than the special benefits. Just the first benefit, the elemental heart, was worlds apart. At that time, Lin Feng had been gifted a D1 grade elemental heart of any category. The price difference between AD1 and AD9 was more than 10 times. However, this was already the best offer that Crown Elite Academy could offer. It was especially for those who were just one step away from the critical line of brain expanse. Everyone was holding their breaths. All the students stared at the sun lamp. Their gazes were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. This was especially so for Sherwin Long. His handsome face was contorted. He no longer had the demeanor of a young master. Right now, he was like a wild beast whose food had been snatched away. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He couldn't wait to swallow Lin Feng whole. The teacher from Crown Elite Academy had a smile on his face. He was looking at the teacher from Sunset City's Gene Academy arrogantly. It was as though he was saying, until the last moment, no one knows who will have the last laugh. Brain expanse. Lin Feng's brain expanse was a notch higher than Xiao Shiyuan's. He was the real #1 in this graduation assessment. However, the red light extinguished. The sun lamp's glow was like the expression of the teacher from Crown Elite Academy. It instantly dimmed. It was filled with shock and doubt. Even the resolute and solemn face of the dean, sure, revealed a rare look of surprise. Lin Feng had rejected the offer from Crown Elite Academy. Was the offer not good enough? No. Yin Rushuang's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. She was very clear about the recruitment process of the 2 major advanced academies. What Lin Feng would receive would definitely be special benefits. It could be said that apart from the exclusive benefits of early recruitment, special benefits were already the highest conditions that Crown Elite Academy could offer. Yin Rushuang looked at Lin Feng and suddenly revealed a faint smile with a tinge of helplessness. Backbone, dignity, disregarding other factors, just for dignity, Lin Feng would never join Crown Elite Academy again. Back then, he had been humiliated like that. It could be said that he had been kicked out of the academy. Today, they wanted to give Lin Feng some benefits and turn back. Wasn't Crown Elite Academy too naive? Indeed, Crown Elite Academy was very famous and had nurtured countless outstanding genetic warriors. However, Crown Elite Academy wasn't the only elite academy in Sunset City. Just the Sunset City Genetic Academy alone wasn't much weaker than Crown Elite Academy. Sorry. Lin Feng bowed his head apologetically. His voice was neither servile nor overbearing. He still had to show the proper manners, just like what Tao Jing had done previously. The expression of the teacher from Crown Elite Academy turned ashen. He had always been the one to choose the students. When had he ever been rejected by a student? It was very embarrassing. If it was any other occasion, he would have left in a huff. However, due to Dean Shi's face, he couldn't flare up. He could only swallow his anger. The situation had taken a turn. The teacher from Sunset City Genetic Academy couldn't help but reveal a smile. Lin Feng. Brain Expanse 9. 90%. First class. Teacher evaluation 8. The teacher's voice rang out, causing another commotion. Not only did he affirm Lin Feng's brain expanse and strength, but more importantly, his teacher evaluation was as high as a 8. Let alone this batch. Even in the history of the Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy, the number of times a grade appeared could be counted with one's fingers. Astonishment, jealousy, envy, all sorts of gazes gathered. Only Yongli had an as expected expression. 10th class genius? Brain expanse, degenerating into an idiot? The students who were mocking Lin Feng earlier were all flushed red. They felt extremely ashamed. If Lin Feng was a 10th class genius, then what were they? 20 ranks, 30 ranks, or 50 ranks? F***CK, often, you were too unkind. You didn't even tell me that your brain had recovered. Yongli punched Lin Feng's chest. Earlier, I was so frightened by you that my heart almost jumped out. Lin Feng smiled helplessly. For a moment, he didn't know how to reply to Yongli. It was because even he himself wasn't sure what was going on. Lin Feng shrugged and said, "If I say this is the result of cultivating the ancient martial arts sutra for 3 months, would you believe me? 3 months and your brain expanse increased from 500. Yongli glared at him. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Even if a genetic warrior was given 3 years, it wouldn't be enough. An ancient martial artist only needs 3 months? I'd be a bastard if I believed you. Right? Lin Feng smiled and said, "Actually, I don't believe it either. Look at how cocky you are." Yongli laughed heartily and raised his eyebrows. "Look, this group of people were still mocking and discussing you earlier. Now, they're all scared silly. This is really satisfying. Also, that teacher evaluation of A8. See, what did I say? Teacher Ian likes you. If you say that there is nothing going on between the two of you. Who are you trying to fool? F***CKU. Lin Feng chided with a smile. You can't talk nonsense about this. As he spoke, Lin Feng glanced at the stage and happened to meet Teacher Yin's gaze. Lin Feng nodded respectfully and gratefully, while Yin Rushuang revealed a faint smile. Lin Feng turned his head and happened to meet Yang Li's gaze. The latter was pretending not to see anything as his eyes darted around. Lin Feng sighed helplessly. He couldn't be bothered to explain to Yang Li. He had made a bad friend by mistake. Lin Feng's number was near the end. Soon, the remaining students completed the brain expanse test, and the graduation assessment came to an end. Dean Shi and teacher Yin Rushuang gave their speech. With Lin Feng and Xiao Xiwan as the leader, this batch of students was considered to have truly graduated. Brother Feng, senior, the moment the graduation ceremony ended, Lin Feng was surrounded. Regardless of whether they could become friends with Lin Feng, the students wanted to at least get familiar with him. Unfortunately, Lin Feng had a bodyguard beside him, waving his sandbag-sized fists. Yang Li had a ferocious look as he glared at them with his bell-sized eyes. The students could only leave resentfully and turn their attention to Xiao Xiwan and Xiang Yang. I've finally gotten rid of those annoying flies. Yang Li rolled up his sleeves and snorted. Lin Feng smiled faintly and walked out of the assessment center with Yang Li. The students behind them looked on anxiously. At this moment, they were so regretful that their intestines were turning green. It would have been great to befriend Lin Feng when he was down. Now, even if they had 1,000 or 10,000 intentions, Lin Feng wouldn't even look at them. All right, Offing, I have a question that I wanted to ask you just now. Yang Li opened his mouth and said, about rejecting the Crown Elite Academy? Lin Feng stepped on the floating stairs and walked down slowly. His expression was calm and composed. Yang Li nodded and said seriously, that's the Crown Elite Academy. Many people dream of entering. Although their actions at that time were indeed a little unkind, but from their standpoint, they weren't completely wrong. Offing, you wouldn't really reject the Crown Elite Academy just to vent your anger, right? What do you think? Lin Feng smiled faintly. Yang Li looked straight at Lin Feng. After a long while, he shook his head and said dejectedly, I don't know. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly. He said slowly, since young, Big Brother taught me that as a man, I have to be indomitable. I have to stand up straight and straighten my spine. I don't have to bow and scrape. In his mind, the scene of him being kicked out of the Crown Elite Academy a year ago appeared. Lin Feng shook his head. Even horses don't turn back, let alone humans. Stepping down the floating stairs, Lin Feng said softly, moreover, After saying that, Lin Feng stopped and looked into the distance. He saw an elegant man wearing silver Geno armor with a smile on his face. He was leaning against a huge tree and looking at him with a smile. It was the teacher from the Gene Academy in Luori City. He was waiting for him. Lin Feng was deep in thought. Chapter 11. I'll wait for you over there. Yang Li tactfully avoided him. Lin Feng nodded and walked over. Let me introduce myself. I'm Wang Kai, a beginner teacher of Sunset City's Gene Academy. The scholarly man smiled and handed over a name card. Lin Feng received it with both hands. The name card flashed with a faint silver glow, indicating one's identity and status. He placed it on his crystal watch, and the information on the name card, including the number on the watch, was copied. Hello, Senior. Lin Feng bowed respectfully. The teachers of the Advanced Genetic Academies were different from those of the Beginner Genetic Academies. The minimum requirement to become a teacher was Warlord level. This seemingly gentle beginner teacher, Wang Kai, was a true beginner genetic battle general. His strength was unfathomable. There's no need to be so polite. If you don't mind, you can call me Brother Wang. I'm just a few years older than you. Wang Kai smiled. Lin Feng was surprised and looked over. Indeed, Wang Kai's skin was fair and lustrous. His eyes were bright and spirited. However, he was wearing silver genetic battle armor and combat boots. He looked very mature. Brother Wang. Lin Feng nodded and felt that the teachers of Sunset City's Gene Academy were very approachable. Wang Kai smiled and had a natural expression. Lin Feng, since you call me Brother Wang, I'll get straight to the point. I've seen your background. Crown Elite Academy has always been arrogant and looks down on others. Back then, they didn't want you because they were blind. I admire your backbone. Here, I represent Sunset City's Gene Academy to sincerely invite you to join us. I can guarantee that your treatment won't be worse than Crown Elite Academy. Lin Feng looked over and deeply felt the sincerity of teacher Wang Kai. Since he could make such a request, it was obvious that he had come prepared. But I'm really sorry, Brother Wang. Lin Feng bowed and apologized. Is it because of the benefits? Wang Kai's eyes flickered. Our academy values talents the most. If you're not satisfied with the special benefits, I can help you apply for exclusive benefits. Exclusive benefits that could only be enjoyed by those who were recruited early. That's not the reason. Lin Feng shook his head and declined. Oh! Wang Kai glanced at Lin Feng, pursed his lips thoughtfully, and sighed. All right then. Since you have other plans, Lin Feng, I won't force you. Wang Kai nodded and revealed a calm smile. However, the doors of the Gene Academy in Luori City will always be open to you. If you change your mind, just contact me. Okay, Brother Wang. Lin Feng smiled apologetically. Wang Kai smiled elegantly and patted Lin Feng's shoulder. Then, he jumped on a magnetic pole suspension car and sped away. Looking at Wang Kai's departing figure, Lin Feng's eyes were filled with reverence. This was a true expert, regardless of strength or inner qualities. If it wasn't for his strange body and mental expanse, joining the Sunset City Genetic Academy would have been a pretty good choice. On the way, I knew it. How could the Sunset City Genetic Academy not recruit you, Offing? Yang Li had a matter-of-fact look on his face. Before the accident, Offing, you were a super genius who surpassed Xiao Shiwan by several streets. Even though your mental expanse has just recovered, Xiao Shiwan can't be compared to you. All right, Offing, what did the Sunset City Genetic Academy offer you? Yang Li's eyes lit up. It definitely won't be any worse than the Crown Elite Academy, right? Lin Feng nodded. Exclusive benefits. Damn. Yang Li opened his eyes wide and said in a daze, Are you serious? But then again, Offing, you should have gotten exclusive benefits anyway. Lin Feng said softly, I rejected them. What? Yang Li was instantly stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Looking at Yang Li's dazed expression, Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. What's the matter? Are you that surprised? No, Offing. What are you thinking? Yang Li regained his senses and quickly caught up with Lin Feng. His face was filled with doubt. I can understand why you rejected the Crown Elite Academy. But the Sunset City Genetic Academy has sent teachers to recruit you personally. The benefits are good too. You won't get another chance like this again. Lin Feng looked into the distance and his eyes flickered. It's a pity. What? Yang Li didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Lin Feng revealed a smile and walked out of the academy. Let's go. You'll know tomorrow. What do you mean? Hey, off and wait for me. Tell me the reason quickly. If not, I won't be able to sleep. The noisy voices landed in the quiet academy, bringing about vitality and vigor. The winter sun was warm. When it shone on Lin Feng's back, it was no longer as dark as the night. Instead, it carried a bright luster and a deep warmth. Rejecting 2 high-grade genetic academies consecutively, Lin Feng didn't know that at this moment, the news about him had once again caused a commotion. Some people scolded him for being stupid, some said he didn't know what he was doing, and even more people were puzzled. However, Lin Feng didn't care and wouldn't explain too much. As long as he knew what he was doing, it was enough. Hu, Xiao, Lin Feng sat cross-legged in the training room, cultivating nonstop. While in a meditative state, Lin Feng's mind was clear. After cultivating the 9-dragon scripture for 3 months, he had already mastered the first level. His cultivation was instinctive, as if he was walking and breathing. Through his inner vision, he could clearly see the dense energy of heaven and earth enveloping his body like clouds. It was being absorbed by the 9-dragon scripture. The energy of heaven and earth entered his meridians, returning to his dantian. With his dantian as the source, the energy flowed to all parts of his body. This was the cultivation method of ancient martial artists. The absorption of energy in my dantian is a little blocked. It's almost at its limit. At this moment, Lin Feng clearly understood his own condition. His dantian had reached its limit, and so had his body. His brain region was about to reach the first bottleneck, the 10% critical line. It was like inflating a balloon. The further it went, the more pressure one would feel. It's not just my dantian, Lin Feng thought to himself. Through his inner vision, he could see that the small sphere in his dantian was also in a saturated state. Although he couldn't determine its energy aura, he had a strange feeling in his heart. It was like a part of his dantian, and it had also grown to its limit. The absorption of energy, rotation speed, and other aspects had all reached a peak along with its size. Right now, the small sphere had expanded from the size of 1/10,000 th of his dantian to 1/1000 th of his dantian. Regardless of the energy absorption or rotation speed, both had increased by a lot. Lin Feng was full of doubts. What exactly is it? Will it continue to grow? Is there any connection between it and the dantian? My brain region, will it regress again because of it? There were a lot of questions that Lin Feng had no way of answering. However, there was one point that Lin Feng was very sure of: the improvement of his physical fitness. Although I haven't tested it, my physical fitness index has at least doubled compared to 3 months ago. Lin Feng was actually very shocked. That was because 3 months ago, his physical fitness index was already at the top among his peers, reaching the level of a beginner genetic warrior. However, now, to think that it could even double the strength, and this was only the most conservative estimate. Chi. With a laser blade in his hand, Lin Feng's movements were concise and direct. Not a single bit of energy was wasted when the laser blade was swung. It was as clean and neat as a machine's blade. An intense sound of friction could be heard as the laser blade collided with the metal wall and instantly dissipated. Neo martial art, using one's genetic energy to erupt with combat strength. It emphasized on effectiveness and might. In the consciousness space, technology was used to support the practice, striving for perfection in detail. Using percentages to increase one's combat strength, there were no fancy tricks. Only hard work could be done, and there were no shortcuts. Neo-martial arts emphasize on effectiveness, while ancient martial arts emphasize on concept. Neo-martial arts can only erupt with the strongest combat strength when combined with genetic energy. As for ancient martial arts, they are one with the energy of heaven and earth. The two are 2 completely different factions. They are poles apart. Buzz, the white light of the laser blade emitted a powerful laser energy. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he tightened his grip on the blade. He was very reluctant. However, he had no choice but to do so. Since he had embarked on the path of an ancient martial artist, he had to focus on cultivating his heart and martial arts. This was also the real reason why he had rejected the Sunset City Genetic Academy. Similar to the Crown Elite Academy, the Sunset City Genetic Academy was a pure genetic warrior academy that specialized in nurturing genetic warriors. However, the Combat Academy was different from the other two high-tier genetic academies. They emphasize on actual combat and use battles to temper themselves. Lin Feng's eyes gleamed. Putting everything else aside, just the Combat Academy's mission and style made him have a good impression of it. It was also the only one among the three high-tier genetic academies that accepted ancient martial artists. Most of the ancient martial artists in the Sunset City who had reached the age of 18 would choose to enter the Combat Academy. However, the competition and elimination were much crueler than the genetic warriors. One must know that genetic warriors could only cultivate if they had innate genes. But what about ancient martial artists? 100%. Everyone could cultivate unconditionally. Of course, with different aptitudes, one's cultivation speed and strength will be different. This was something that also existed among genetic warriors. There were big and small eggs, good and bad eggs. There were also differences in aptitudes and personalities. The path one took would be different, and their future achievements will be different. Although I can only get the basic benefits after enrolling in the Combat Academy, 2 bottles of gene fluid per month is already enough. Lin Feng had already made up his mind. 2 bottles of gene fluid, plus the one that his sister could get, would be enough for his sister to absorb gene fluid every month. Indeed, the basic benefits were very different. Just being able to choose one of the 3 E9 elemental hearts was already very different from the exclusive benefits. But he did not intend to become a genetic warrior. After 3 months of cultivation, Lin Feng clearly understood which path was the most suitable for him. Although his genetic warrior aptitude was outstanding compared to the ancient martial artist aptitude, it was like the difference between a firefly and the moon. In just 3 months, his brain region had broken through from 0% to near the critical line. Such a cultivation speed was unheard of. It cannot be described with just the word terrifying. Perhaps his strength as an ancient martial artist could not be compared to a genetic warrior, but he believed that it would not be long before he would be able to surpass him in all aspects. Enrolling in the Combat Academy would allow him to walk faster and more steadily on the path of an ancient martial artist. Tomorrow is the Combat Academy selection. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. The laser saber in his hand glowed white again, and his battle intent radiated. Jiayang District, in a luxurious garden bungalow. This idiot actually rejected the Crown Elite Academy and the Sunset City Genetic Academy. A pauper will always be a pauper. He is short-sighted. Shi Wenlong's eyes were filled with disdain. At this moment, he was practicing his sword in the training ground. With a swoosh, he pierced out with his sword. Uncle Wang, do you think this Lin Feng is crazy? Uncle Wang held a towel and bowed. Young master, you must focus on practicing your sword. Got it. Annoying. Shi Wenlong was unhappy. If it was someone else who dared to talk back, he would have scolded them. However, although Uncle Wang called himself an old servant, he was close friends with Shi Wenlong's father. Shi Wenlong did not dare to be rash. After mumbling a few words, Shi Wenlong picked up his sword and practiced again. However, he was still scheming in his heart. His gaze was filled with hatred. It's good that he did not enter a high-grade genetic academy. Otherwise, it would be troublesome to deal with him. There's a 99% chance that this pauper wants to enter the city directly. I don't know how he managed to recover his brain region. I'll let him be proud for 2 days. After the Combat Academy selection ends tomorrow, I will take care of him. How dare he provoke me, Shi Wenlong. He really doesn't know how to write the word death. When the time comes, I will *CK that slut Wang Qian in front of you. Also, I will skin you alive with my last sword. Lin Feng, I want you to suffer more pain than death. Chapter 12. January 2nd. The weather was clear. Brother, all the best. Yu clenched her fists and smiled. You too. Be careful of the cars. Lin Feng rubbed his sister's head with a doting look. Today, all the youths in Jiaoyang district who had reached the age of 12 would undergo a brain expanse test to see if they had a natural gene and could become a genetic warrior. His sister, Lin, was one of them. Even though Lin Feng already had an answer in his heart, he was still looking forward to it. I know, I'm not a kid. Lin blinked her eyes playfully and pouted. I won't get lost even if I close my eyes from home to Jiaoyang District's Elementary Genetic Academy. Okay, I'll wait for your good news when I come back. Lin Feng smiled and looked at his mother, Ji Ruhua. He waved his hand and said, I'm leaving, Mom. Come back early. Ji Ruhua smiled gently. Lin Feng hummed softly, his heart rippling with faint happiness and warmth. His elder brother was no longer around. His mother and sister were his everything. He had to do his best to take care of them and make them happy. He was glad that he managed to catch the last bus at the last moment. If he could enter a combat academy, his future would be better than entering the military. With a light leap, Lin Feng jumped out of the window. His legs were like springs. Lin Feng leaped like a light swallow. He climbed 5 floors as if he was walking on flat ground. However, he was much faster than taking the elevator. Offing, I heard that you're going to apply for a combat academy. Yes, Mother Pei. Lin Feng smiled and greeted her. They lived in the same district and had a good relationship with their neighbors. He didn't need to ask to know that the news must have come from his sister. In Ping'an District, there was basically a genetic warrior or ancient martial artist at home. Therefore, they were clear about the academy. All the best, little Lin. We'll wait for your good news. Okay, Uncle Wang. Lin Feng said goodbye to his neighbors one by one. Lin Feng had always been amiable and approachable, so he was very popular in the neighborhood. Back when Lin Feng's mind expanse degenerated, everyone in the estate felt pity for him. Seeing Lin Feng regain his strength, everyone was happy for him. Thank you, Lin Feng said gratefully. In the academy, what he felt was competition and pressure, which spurred him to constantly move forward. He couldn't relax in the slightest. But here, he felt the warmth of home and the care of others. It was a pity that he had been trapped in a nightmare demonic wheel that day and had sealed himself, unable to see his surroundings clearly. Most of the time, it was easy for people to overlook the people around them. Rumble, rumble. The train sped along, and the scenery outside the window was like a picture being played 100 times faster. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he stared out of the window. Even though he could not train in the subway, he could train his dynamic vision. Dynamic vision was very useful in a battle that could change at any moment. Observing the enemy's movements, he could instantly make a decision to attack, counterattack, or even defend. A tenth of a second, 100th of a second, or even 1,000th of a second could change the outcome of a battle. The speed of the train was very fast, but couldn't be faster than Lin Feng's eyes. From being unable to see clearly when he was young, to being able to see vaguely, and then to being able to see vaguely. Today, Lin Feng could clearly see every word on the station's billboard, and even the little bugs crawling on the stone walls and the lines on the stones. Often, there are too many geniuses in this world. You should be grateful to them. Because of their lack of effort, we mortals have the possibility to work hard and create miracles, remembering his elder brother's teachings. Lin Feng had never given up on persevering and working hard. Even in that nightmarish year, after experiencing numerous setbacks, Lin Feng chose to work even harder in his cultivation, to prove himself, to fight, and not to give up. This was because he knew a very simple truth. Hard work might not guarantee success, but if you don't work hard, you definitely won't succeed. Next stop, War College. Passengers getting off the train, please get ready in advance. A clear and pleasant voice sounded in his ears. Lin Feng exhaled lightly, closed his eyes, and ended the dynamic vision exercise, allowing his tired eyes to rest and recover. Half a minute later, Lin Feng's eyes were bright. He clearly felt that the train was slowing down and was about to arrive at the destination. With the rapid development of technology, the pollution-free, fast, and convenient magnetic pole subway had become the best means of transportation. The subway in Sunset City was like a spider's web covering the main city and the 60 districts, and people could go anywhere they wanted. However, rich people usually chose the magnetic pole suspension car, and there was almost no Geno warrior wearing an elemental armor in the subway. On the contrary, most of the people were young men of the same age as Lin Feng, with simple and vigorous faces. So many of them are participating in the War College examination. Lin Feng glanced at them casually and knew that these young men had the same purpose as him. The difference was that they were participating in the Ancient Warrior examination, while he was participating in the Geno Warrior examination. The two were poles apart, and the admission rate was already very different. In the Geno Warrior examination, the admission rate was close to 4-1, which was about 20%. However, the admission rate of the Ancient Warrior examination was extremely cruel, not to mention a 20% admission rate. Even a 2% admission rate was an extravagant hope. It was important to know that the average Geno warrior was less than 1 in 100, which meant that the remaining 99 people would practice Ancient Warrior. What a large number! The base of practice was large, so naturally, the competition was fierce. Those who could enter the War College through various elections. All of them were elites of the Ancient Warrior elite. I really want to give it a try. Lin Feng was actually very eager in his heart. Compared to the Geno Warrior examination, he wanted to try the Ancient Warrior examination more. The excitement and satisfaction of competition, the feeling of standing out, was really refreshing. In Lin Feng's bones, he longed for battle and challenge, but if he passed the Ancient Warrior examination, he would enter the Ancient Warrior branch. Nothing else mattered, but he would not be able to get the 2 bottles of Geno fluid every month. There will always be a chance. Lin Feng thought to himself. As long as he entered the War College, with the War College's valiant, capable, and tempering style, he would have a chance to compete and fight. A glint flashed in his eyes. As the train slowly came to a stop, Lin Feng walked out. Clouds floated in the sky, and it was exceptionally clear. Walking out of the subway, Lin Feng could not help but take a deep breath. The fresh air was rich with heaven and earth energy, which made him feel refreshed. In midair, countless wireless eyes were like eyes in the sky, closely monitoring the area with the War College as the center. Sure enough, it's Sunset City, Lin Feng thought to himself. When he looked up, he could vaguely see his own image in the sky eyes line of sight. If Jiang District also had wireless sky eyes, there wouldn't be so many civilians suffering and living in fear. Lin Feng still remembered the life of the civilians. It was a living forest with a strong preyed on the weak, and there was no reason to speak of. He and his brother had grown up in the civilian area, so they knew how to protect themselves and their family. Wasn't the examination in the Ancient Warrior branch in the past? Why did it change to the Geno Warrior branch this year? How would I know? The War College's examination is different every year. Could it be that they're going to use some high-tech gadgets this year? Who cares? As long as it's not like last year, it's fine as long as they don't directly assess the physical index. Under the scanning of the electric eye, all those whose physical index did not reach the beginner Ancient Warrior level would be eliminated. That's tragic. The sound of discussion rang in his ears. Lin Feng looked over. The people talking were 2 young men in martial arts uniforms. Their bodies were unusually strong, and they walked forward while chatting. Their destination seems to be the Geno Warrior branch as well. Lin Feng thought to himself and followed them. With someone leading the way, he didn't have to search around. Walking leisurely, Lin Feng looked around curiously. He wasn't afraid of getting lost. All the young men around him had the same destination, and there were no forks in the huge square. Looking around, he saw that almost all the martial arts uniforms came from different districts. Although technology was advancing rapidly, the gap between the rich and the poor was still unavoidable. If the civilians wanted to make a name for themselves, their only hope was to become an ancient warrior if they didn't have any natural genes. Joining the local martial arts school was the most direct way, and there were no requirements. As expected, there aren't any of the 4 major martial arts schools. Lin Feng looked around, wanting to see the real ancient warrior elite. The martial arts schools were like the Geno warriors compared to the Geno warriors. It was also difficult to enter the martial arts schools, and their status was higher than the War College. To enter the martial arts schools, one had to pay the high tuition fees or be an ancient warrior elite who was selected through various examinations. The top ancient warriors who stood out from the major martial arts schools were no worse than the Geno warriors. That was because the number of ancient warriors was huge. Perhaps the path of an ancient warrior is much harder than that of a Geno warrior. The competition is greater, and cultivation is harder. But there is no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Ancient warriors might not be inferior to Geno warriors. Ever since he decided to walk the path of an ancient warrior, Lin Feng had a deeper understanding of ancient warriors. This was a path of practice that was similar to that of a Geno warrior. To be precise, whether it was an ancient warrior or a Geno warrior, they were both just one system and one method. All the practice of returning to the basics had the same ultimate goal: to increase the mind expanse and unlock the human's potential. With the increase of the mind expanse, humans could become smarter and stronger. Little by little, they would break through their limits. Chapter 13. The square was very big. However, after entering the college, Lin Feng realized that the huge square was just a corridor. The end of the corridor was a fork in the road. The left side was filled with trees and sand, creating a natural scenery that made one feel relaxed and happy. The right side was covered with tempered glass, and faint lines could be seen clearly when one stepped on it. Lin Feng followed the flow of people and walked forward. He could see a metal gate that was as tall as a mountain from afar. As he walked forward, his vision became clearer. Battle! Lin Feng's heart trembled. The word battle above the gate was like a huge dragon, making him feel deep veneration. The huge metal gate was wide open and could allow tens of people to enter side by side. There were 3 laser cannons on both sides of the metal gate. The pitch-black muzzles gave off a terrifying feeling. Wireless Heaven's eyes could be seen everywhere, covering the entire college. It was as tight as a military base. This is a true high-grade genetic college. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. The difference between the Jiaoyang District's elementary genetic college and the battle college was like the difference between a child and an adult. Although he had learned about the battle college from the information, he could only feel how majestic and incomparable it was when he saw it with his own eyes. Very soon, I will become one of them. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a faint light, and he was faintly excited. He was filled with anticipation. It was as if he had seen an unscalable mountain. His heart was filled with longing, wanting to admire its majesty and subdue it under his feet. Influenced by his elder brother, Lin Feng was never willing to be lonely. He thirsted for challenges and had the heart of a fearless expert. He wanted to become a true expert like his elder brother. There were many people. Lin Feng looked around and saw crowds everywhere. Most of them were ancient martial artists from the Sunset Dojo in the main city area. There were also martial artists from the various districts. Occasionally, he would see a few ancient martial artists wearing elemental battle suits. Lin Feng wandered around and couldn't help but admit one thing: he was lost. Previously, he had followed the flow of people but was stopped at the ancient martial artist examination area. The examinations for ancient martial artists and genetic warriors were separated. If Ollie finds out, he'll definitely laugh at me. Lin Feng shook his head and looked around. The environment was filled with machinery and technology, brimming with a strong metallic feeling. The floor-to-ceiling tempered glass was like a mirror, dazzling people. To be honest, this place was quite beautiful. It was clean and spotless, but at this moment, he was not in the mood to appreciate it. If he was late, he would be in big trouble. Let's ask someone. Lin Feng's eyes were like torches. Suddenly, his ears twitched. He quickly turned his head to look to the right. He saw a purple-clothed young girl galloping over like a gust of wind. On the back of the purple-clothed girl, there were 2 sections of red and black alloy that formed a unique and strange pattern. U-Series lightsaber. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he was shocked. C1. Lin Feng's dynamic vision was quite outstanding. Even though it was just a tiny mark at the bottom of the hilt, he could still see it clearly. Lightsabers and beam sabers were common weapons of genetic warriors. Without a doubt, this purple-clothed girl was undoubtedly a genetic warrior. But to have a C1 U-Series lightsaber, what kind of status did she have? Lin Feng himself only used the E9 laser knife given by the Academy. It was a common product without a model. But Lin Feng did not care so much at the moment. Asking for directions was more important. "Excuse me, can I have a moment of your time?" Lin Feng moved slightly and blocked the purple-clothed girl's path. The purple-clothed girl did not expect a fragrant wind to blow over. But her reaction was not slow. Her delicate feet tapped the ground, and she somersaulted over Lin Feng's head, as light as a swallow. Lin Feng snorted softly and turned his head abruptly. He happened to be face to face with the purple-clothed girl, and their eyes met. She looked like she was carved out of jade. What a beautiful face that could captivate even the birds and beasts. Wang Qian could be considered a first-class beauty, but compared to the purple-clothed girl in front of him, she was much more ordinary. "But I don't have time. If you want to strike up a conversation, find someone else." The purple-clothed girl had already disappeared like a gust of wind. Her fragrant scent lingered at the tip of his nose. Looking at the purple-clothed figure leaving, Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or cry. He seemed to have been misunderstood. Blocking someone's path for no reason. No wonder she misunderstood. She has two C1U series lightsabers. She is definitely not an ordinary rich girl. Her background is illustrious. She must have many pursuers. Lin Feng smiled in relief. It was reasonable for him to be misunderstood as trying to strike up a conversation. There was no need to chase after her. Not to mention, her speed was quite fast. Is she also applying for the Battle Academy? Lin Feng thought. She doesn't look like she's 18 years old, right? Thinking of this, Lin Feng could not help but smile. If she was not applying for the Battle Academy, how could she appear here? That direction, huh? Lin Feng looked in that direction and nodded thoughtfully. Then, he followed after them. Although he did not ask for directions, following the purple-clothed girl should be the right choice. Big Brother always says that there is always someone better than you. Sure enough, I cannot underestimate my enemy. This is the first Gene warrior I met, but she is already so strong. Sure enough, it's this direction. After walking in the direction, the purple-clothed girl left for 5 minutes. Lin Feng felt relieved. Although the crowd here was not as dense as the ancient warriors, he could clearly tell that they were Gene warriors. Naturally, he would not get lost if he followed them. After walking for about 15 minutes, he came to a translucent door about 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. It was emitting a green light. Identity verification. Palm. Lin Feng extended his right palm and pressed it against the palm print in front of the azure-green door of light. Suddenly, beep. Above the translucent door, Lin Feng's picture, introduction, and almost all of his information appeared clearly. In a flash, the translucent door disappeared and the entrance appeared. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly, and he entered. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he was suddenly enlightened. Stepping into the sky, he saw a luxurious hall about twice the size of a football field. The semi-elliptical ceiling emitted a bright light, illuminating the entire room clearly. At the front was a huge screen that was 20 meters long and 10 meters tall. At the moment, it was rotating in a three-dimensional form, showing the entire Battle Academy. In the middle of the hall, there were hundreds of supercomputers, including consciousness helmets and virtual illusions. It was even better than the best internet cafes in Jiaoyang District. Near the entrance, there were many people gathered. Obviously, they were all Gene warriors who came to participate in the assessment. Ollie should be here by now, right? Lin Feng thought to himself. Although he had left early, he had wasted a lot of time getting lost. At this time, there were about 300 people in the hall. It was not an easy task to find a familiar face among these 300 people. Well, it seems so. Lin Feng heard a familiar loud voice, and he smiled slightly. Following the voice, he saw half of Ali's back. He was chatting with a girl. Lin Feng walked over, and his eyes lit up. It was Tao Jing. At this time, Tao Jing seemed to feel Lin Feng's gaze. She looked over, and the two of them suddenly looked at each other. Lin Feng raised his right hand and greeted her with a smile. Tao Jing was stunned. Suddenly, her face turned red, and she lowered her head. Still shy as usual, Lin Feng knew Tao Jing's personality. This thin ponytail girl was very shy. Every time he greeted her, she would lower her head, and her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. It was not that she lacked confidence. In fact, Tao Jing was delicate and pretty. She was the type that was easy to look at. Her shyness was due to her personality, and she was not good at communicating with people. Seeing Tao Jing's strange behavior, Yang Li, who was talking nonstop, scratched his head in surprise and turned his head back with a little doubt. In an instant, Yang Li's eyes widened. He was completely dumbfounded. Lin Feng smiled. Offering you, Yang Li regained his senses and said, "Why are you here? Can't I come?" Lin Feng smiled and walked to the two of them. He glanced at Tao Jing, who still had her head lowered. Her face was slightly red, and then looked at Yang Li's slightly flustered expression. He seemed to have understood something. "Seems like I came at the wrong time." Tao Jing was shocked when she heard this. She quickly said, I just arrived." Yang Li rolled his eyes helplessly. "Offing, what kind of show are you putting on? You don't want the special benefits of the elite Crown Academy or the exclusive benefits of the Gene Academy in Luori City. You came to the Battle College to take the test. Boss, do you know that even if you pass the test and enter the Battle College, you will only get the basic benefits?" Lin Feng smiled and nodded. Yang Li looked at Lin Feng. His expression was strange and speechless. After a long time, he sighed. "All right, you win. I think Brother Lin has his reasons." Tao Jing's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Her face was still slightly red. When she saw Lin Feng looking at her, she immediately lowered her head again. "A very smart girl," Lin Feng commented in his heart. His gaze landed on Yang Li. The latter was deep in thought. It seemed that he couldn't think of a reason. Lin Feng patted Yang Li's shoulder and smiled. "It's a personal reason. I will tell you when I have the chance." "Oh right, has the test content been released?" If he knew the content of the test, he could make preparations in advance. Although Lin Feng was confident about entering the Battle College, he didn't want to be careless and lose everything. "No." Yang Li pointed to the surroundings. "Look, everyone is discussing. Last year, the Battle College's assessment was divided into 3 rounds. Each round was notified in advance. This year, there was no news until now. It's quite nerve-wracking." Yang Li's gaze fell on the supercomputers. His eyes were shining. TSK, I really want to play in the online world to ease my nerves." Lin Feng smiled. Yang Li was famous for his playfulness. It was a pity that his father kept a tight rein on him. The current online world was like another time and space. The virtual reality was close to 100%. Basically, everything in the real world could be found in the online world. Many things that couldn't be realized in the real world could be satisfied in the online world. Regardless of gender, age, or gender, people could find fun in it. Unfortunately, one couldn't have the best of both worlds. After all, people's energy was limited. Could it be? Lin Feng looked at the hundreds of supercomputers. A ridiculous thought rose in his mind. This assessment is related to the online world? Lin Feng smiled. He knew that the possibility wasn't high. The purpose of the Battle College's assessment was to select the elite, not the online elite. His gaze fell on the surroundings, causing the outstanding students to feel nervous. After all, an 80% elimination rate wasn't a joke. Moreover, they were all abandoned by the 2 high-grade genetic academies. "Why don't I see her?" Lin Feng was curious. He glanced around and didn't see the purple-robed young lady from earlier. Lin Feng had a deep impression of her. It wasn't because of her beautiful appearance. Rather, it was because of her strength despite her young age. His intuition told him that the purple-robed young lady's strength might be above his. Lin Feng casually looked around. Sometimes, he couldn't find what he wanted to find. As for those he didn't want to find, yet he found them. Swish! Wah! 2 gazes met in an instant, causing sparks to fly in all directions. Lin Feng. Shi Wenlong's eyes were wide open. His face twitched as he was unable to restrain his anger. "Damn, Popper, you're really haunting me. You even want to meddle in the Battle College's assessment." F***K. Gritting his teeth, Shi Wenlong's gaze landed on the crystal watch in his hand. He frowned. Why hasn't there been any news from the Vulture Gang yet? Why are they taking so long to settle such a small matter? With a cold snort, Sherwin Long turned his head and avoided Lin Feng. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Wait a while more. Lin Feng, you will die without a burial ground. Chapter 14. What's the matter? Yang Li asked. It's nothing. Lin Feng turned his head and smiled. Confusion flashed in his eyes. Sherwin Long was very strange today. He had always been arrogant and did not put anyone in his eyes. There was no reason for him to turn around and leave when he saw him. This reaction was very unusual. Lin Feng frowned slightly. He wanted to infer something from Sherwin Long's expression, but there was no clue. But he always felt that there was something wrong with Sherwin Long. At this moment, the lights in the entire hall suddenly went out, causing a commotion. Lin Feng recovered from his thoughts. Like the other students, his eyes fell on the only light source. The huge screen in front of the hall, which was originally showing a three-dimensional image of War College, shrank like a star. On the screen, a beautiful woman with a hot body and charm appeared. She wore the Geno armor, but did not look out of place. Instead, it made her slim body look even more curvaceous. Let me introduce myself. I am Yu Meng. This year, I will be in charge of the entrance exam of War College. The slim woman had a faint smile on her face. Listen carefully. I will only say the rules of the exam once. Yu Meng slowed down and her beautiful eyes flashed. Later, each of you will enter an empty virtual illusion device and put on a consciousness helmet. The super brain will automatically scan all the data on your body and activate it. You will enter War World with 100% simulation. War World? Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He had never heard of it before. The surrounding students were also shocked, but they still listened carefully. Your exam will be held at the same time as the entrance exam of the Ancient Warriors. Remember, if you die in War World, it means you are eliminated. Yu Meng smiled faintly. Her hot body attracted everyone's attention. Do your best to compete for the 100 spots. Countdown of 60 seconds. The exam will officially begin. The soft voice still lingered in their hearts, but Yu Meng's charming face had disappeared from the screen. The countdown of 60 seconds appeared in an instant. 59, 58, 57, boom. The whole hall was suddenly in an uproar. What does this mean? How are we going to compete for slots? Why don't you make it clear? What is World War? I've never heard of it. It can't be an online game, right? This is too childish. Complaints rose from all directions as Lin Feng pondered. Although Tutor Yu Meng's words were brief, it was obvious that each sentence had a deeper meaning. She had summarized the rules and contents of the assessment. The most profound sentence was that the assessment would be carried out at the same time as the ancient martial art admissions assessment. Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he thought about what he had seen before. Let's go offing. Look, everyone else has gone in. Yang Li shouted, looking impatient. Lin Feng swept his gaze over the crowd. Indeed, even though the students were grumbling and doubtful, time waits for no one. Each and every one of them hurriedly chose their equipment, afraid that they would fall behind. Lin Feng nodded and looked at Yang Li and Tao Jing. Let's split up too. Good luck. Good luck. The three of them bumped fists. Tao Jing blushed. Jean College, World War Control Room. Large and small, countless screens received information and analyzed the superbrain's data. The QR code was rolling like a snowball. It was almost impossible to see it clearly with the naked eye. Dozens of highly precise mechanical superbrains were skillfully and seriously operated by dozens of technicians. The sound of buttons and electromagnetic sounds rang out one after another. In the main seat of the control room, Yu Meng was wearing a light yellow Geno armor. Her arms were crossed in front of her chest. Her charming eyes were staring at the 16 huge screens in front of her. Dotted lines formed human figures. The detailed data was the students' information scanned by the superbrain. Online games? Luck? Jean College had always been strict. They only wanted elites. However, unlike the other two advanced colleges, Jean College only had one standard for elites: actual combat ability. No matter how high your mind expanse was or how talented you were, if you had zero actual combat ability and zero combat experience, you didn't even have a basic temperament. What was the point of having you? Jean College didn't want pampered flowers that grew up in a greenhouse. Instead, they wanted weeds that would stand tall and grow endlessly regardless of the wind and rain. Wang Xintong, Mind Expanse 9. 29% Physical Index, Quasi-Genetic Warrior, Good. Wu Tsong, Mind Expanse 9. 8% Physical Index, Quasi-Genetic Warrior, Average. Ren Zihao, Mind Expanse 9. 31% Physical Index, Quasi-Genetic Warrior, Excellent. Yu Meng frowned slightly. The smile on her face was gone. It was obvious that she wasn't satisfied with the quality of the students who participated in the assessment. Her gaze fell on the quality of the ancient martial arts students on the left. Yu Meng's tense face relaxed a little. She murmured, "Other than the 4 who were recruited early, the quality of this batch of Gene Warriors is still not good." Yu Meng was helpless. Every batch of good Gene Warriors were from the other 2 advanced colleges. No matter how much Jean College strived for excellence, they still chose the leftovers. At this moment, Yu Jia, not good, Yu Jia. Cries of alarm sounded. Yu Meng's beautiful eyes flashed, and a curvaceous and hot figure appeared on the other side of the control room. There were a total of 100 screens that were simultaneously transmitting the images of the world of war. 99 of the screens were calm, and only the one at the bottom of the right was filled with sword flashes and bloody shadows. Chi! Chi! A white light flashed on the screen. A ferocious-looking giant elemental beast fell in a pool of blood. Thud! The purple figure gracefully landed on the ground. The 2C1 grade metal lightsabers in her hands emitted a dazzling light. Her delicate face was flawless. It was the purple-clothed girl that Lin Feng had bumped into when he was lost. Oh my God, this young lady. Yu Meng smiled bitterly and helplessly, covering her eyes in disbelief. Yu Jia, what should we do now? The technician's face was pale, and cold sweat dripped from his forehead. We really don't know when Miss Ling air snuck in. Do you think we should report this to the dean? Forget it. Let this little girl do what she wants. Yu Meng shook her head and muttered, "She's only here for fun. I don't think she'll cause too much trouble. Just treat her as an intelligent NPC." Although Ling Air became a genetic warrior early and was recruited in advance, it's not against the rules if she really wants to participate in the test. Such a small matter. There's no need to disturb the dean. As she said this, Yu Meng sighed helplessly. She looked at the purple-clothed girl with a doting gaze. At this moment, on the 16 screens that Yu Meng had been observing, a dotted line appeared on the screen at the bottom right corner. The data displayed clearly Lin Feng, graduated from Jiaoyang District's Elementary Gene Academy. Brain Expanse 9, 95%. Physical Index, Elementary Genetic Warrior, Excellent. Chapter 15. Welcome to the World of War, number 320, Student Lin Feng. The gentle and pleasant female voice fell in his ears. Lin Feng clenched his fists and checked his body in surprise. It felt exactly the same. Even the pain was very clear. It was a 100% simulation. Even his crystal watch and E9 laser knife were brought into the world of war. Amazing. Lin Feng was moved. No wonder so many people were addicted to the online world. It was almost no different from the real world. It felt as if he had entered an independent space. You have the last 10 seconds to adapt to the world of war. The gentle female voice sounded again. After 10 seconds, you will be teleported into the 1,000-person arena with other Gene Warrior students. Mission assessment. Kill any Gene Warrior student. 5, 4. The countdown sounded. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. It was a very unexpected mission assessment, but it gave people a feeling of blood boiling. Pa! Holding the laser knife in his hand, Lin Feng was ready. 2, 1. Begin teleportation. Lin Feng's figure disappeared in an instant. Pa! 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 Almost at the same time, more than 400 figures appeared. Their faces were stunned, and their expressions were too slow to react. Some were tongue-tied. It was like a game, but it was so immersive that people couldn't tell whether it was reality or illusion. Lin Feng stood upright, his eyes bright. This was a huge arena. It was designed according to the model of the arena of the previous era, but the area was 10 times the size of the arena. More than 400 students leaned against the 10-meter-high metal outer wall. From above, they formed a huge circle. Every student looked around vigilantly. Battle and blood make people grow. Big Brother once said that in the ruins, in the wilderness, the most terrifying thing is not those ferocious elemental beasts, but people, those greedy and vicious warriors. Sure enough, the war college's purpose is battle. Lin Feng showed a faint smile. He was no stranger to the battle between people. He had experienced too much in the civilian area since he was young. There, no one would care about the life and death of the commoners. They could only rely on themselves. Big Brother had taught him from a young age that if he wanted to protect himself and his family, he had to be stronger and more ruthless than others. No one would pity the weak. Hua! Lin Feng's eyes flashed. With his excellent eyesight, he quickly found a familiar figure. It was Shi Wenlong, wearing a silver-white elemental battle suit and holding a lightsaber. He looked as ferocious as a wolf. He leaned against the wall and stared at the two Geno warriors on his left and right. Killing any of the Geno warriors was enough to complete the test. Therefore, the biggest threat to every Geno warrior was the enemies on both sides. Zheng! Peng! The battle was on the verge of breaking out. After less than 3 seconds of silence, the battle in the 1,000-man arena broke out. A single stone caused 1,000 ripples. Like dominoes being pushed down, the great massacre turned into a chaotic battle. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Geno warriors on both sides of Lin Feng attacked Lin Feng almost at the same time. Without the elemental battle suit and holding the worst E9 laser knife, Lin Feng was naturally treated as a pushover. After all, his strength was unknown. It was not wrong to pick a poor weapon and equipment. However, Lin Feng did not fight. Whoosh! Turning into a flash of light, Lin Feng directly rushed into the center of the arena. Compared to the one-on-one and two-on-one battles at the edge, the center could be said to be the most dangerous and chaotic. No one knew how many enemies were around and whether a dagger would suddenly stab him from behind. But for Lin Feng, it made no difference. Since he had to eliminate someone, he would eliminate someone he hated. Moreover, he was not far from Shi Wenlong. Swoosh! Lin Feng's footsteps were very nimble, and he directly dodged the sword that came from the side. He glanced at the blue-haired youth's eyes and saw the shock and disbelief in his eyes. At this time, the blue-haired youth's waist was exposed, and Lin Feng only needed to release the laser saber energy to kill him. However, Lin Feng did not use the knife. He just kicked the blue-haired youth with his right foot. Using the reaction force, he jumped and turned around faster. Like an assassin, he approached Shi Wenlong at lightning speed. World War Control Room. Oh! Yu Meng's eyes lit up. She immediately noticed Lin Feng. As strong as Yu Meng was, her eyes were sharp. Although the 1,000-man arena was chaotic, Lin Feng's uniqueness did not escape Yu Meng's attention. She smiled. What a bold little guy. It seems that you have a lot of combat experience. But to ignore what is near and seek what is far away. Being too conceited may not be a good thing. Yu Meng's eyes only glanced at the screen on the right. Her eyes quickly focused on the screen on the left. Over there, the ancient martial artist assessment was in full swing. It was not a 1,000-man arena, but a 10,000-man arena. Compared to the genetic warrior assessment, the ancient martial artist assessment was a real fight. The entire 10,000-man arena was densely packed. Whether it was the edge or the center, it was extremely chaotic. Dozens or hundreds of people fighting could be seen everywhere. It was bloody and cruel. Zhong Kue. Yu Meng's eyes fell on a bare-chested, burly youth. She nodded with satisfaction. It seems that he has completely mastered the tiger-roaring fist of the Sunset Martial Arts School. The burly youth roared like a fierce tiger coming down the mountain. His punches were fierce and powerful. Although he was surrounded by more than 10 people, he was still brave and fearless. Ling Yun. Yu Meng glanced at one of the screens. A skinny youth in white clothes had a cold expression. He waved the ice soul sword in his hand. The energy of heaven and earth carried a shocking chill. No one was his match. Yu Meng could not help but praise him. At such a young age, your knife skills have reached the second level. Not bad. The quality of this year's ancient martial artist students is very good, especially Zhong Kuei and Ling Yun. They are not any worse than those who were recruited earlier. Not bad at all. On the other side, very good. Shi Wenlong held the lightsaber in his hand. He was fighting more and more bravely. Wearing the silver elemental armor was like wearing a bulletproof vest. Normal attacks could not break his defense at all. The young man in plain clothes who was fighting with Shi Wenlong looked pale and kept retreating. He was obviously stronger than Shi Wenlong, but he was completely at a disadvantage. Whoosh! The young man in plain clothes hacked down with his sword. Shi Wenlong smiled coldly and did not dodge. Instead, he raised his left arm. Dang! With a crisp sound, the arm guard of the elemental armor flashed with a silver light. The young man in plain clothes' right hand that was holding the laser sword went numb. He looked terrified. A white sword light came from the front. The young man in plain clothes gritted his teeth and moved to the side. However, he only managed to avoid the vital part of his heart. Instantly, blood spurted out. His left arm was crushed by the lightsaber. Blood splattered everywhere. The young man in plain clothes was suddenly exposed due to the intense pain in his heart. Go to hell. Shi Wenlong laughed arrogantly. He waved his right arm, and the lightsaber condensed a strong light and stabbed out again. The young man in plain clothes was completely desperate. His face was mournful. However, in an instant, his pupils dilated several times. He looked in front of him in shock. Behind Shi Wenlong, the amazing sword light turned into a bright meteor. It appeared without warning. The white light directly shrouded Shi Wenlong. D1 Neo Martial Art, Meteor, 35%. Lin Feng's voice came quietly. Whoosh, whoosh. The white sword light directly shattered the neck guard of the elemental armor and cleanly beheaded Shi Wenlong. With bloodshot eyes, Shi Wenlong's head flew in horror. At the last moment, before his consciousness left the world of war, Shi Wenlong saw the face that he hated to the bone. Lin Feng! Shi Wenlong screamed crazily in his heart. His figure turned into a ray of light and was eliminated. Monster! The young man in plain clothes was completely stunned. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed with a colorful light and disappeared instantly. Lin Feng advanced. Yu Meng glanced at the screen on the right. There was one more person on the advanced list. That conceited brat has advanced in rank. He has some real strength. Yu Meng smiled. However, she did not see Lin Feng's amazing sword skills. Among the group of Geno warriors who participated in the assessment, Lin Feng was one of the few who caught her attention. However, it was just a little attention. Geno warriors could only become strong after fusing with the elemental heart. Now, they were not as strong as ancient warriors. Chapter 16. Congratulations on successfully completing the mission assessment. Number 320, Student Lin Feng. The gentle and pleasant female voice sounded again. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. The scene in front of him had changed. From the 1,000-person battle arena filled with murderous aura, he came to a wilderness overgrown with weeds. Lin Feng took a light breath, astonishment in his eyes. What a magical world of war. Not only was there an immersive battle, even the environment is so real. This is... Lin Feng swept his gaze across the area and saw that it was vast and boundless. Greenery was abundant, ores were scattered, and there was a faint smell of wild beasts in the air. Bending down, Lin Feng touched the slightly damp soil. His eyes brightened. Could this be the wilderness that Big Brother mentioned? The wilderness was located around the city. Elemental beasts would occasionally appear, but they were mostly low-level elemental beast soldiers. Therefore, a lot of genetic warriors and ancient warriors would usually choose the wilderness as a place to train their combat power. Although the probability of finding elemental crystals and decent metal ores in the wilderness was very low, it was not difficult to earn a little money and live a well-off life. But That was for genetic warriors and ancient warriors. For students whose brain expanse had not broken through the 10% threshold, even low-level elemental B soldiers were nightmarish existences. Could it be? Lin Feng muttered in his heart, but he immediately rejected the idea. If the next assessment mission was to kill low-level elemental B soldiers, more than 90% of the students would be eliminated. The possibility was not high. But are there really low-level elemental B soldiers here? Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of battle intent. He had heard from Big Brother since he was young that there was all kinds of information about elemental beasts in the superbrain. They had stronger physical talents and battle instincts than humans, but they lacked intelligence. He really wanted to see it for himself. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to complete the mission assessment first. Seems like I have to wait for all the students to complete the first round of assessment. Lin Feng was deep in thought, but he was not in a hurry. He stood there calmly, looking around vigilantly while resting. Time passed quickly. All Geno warriors, please pay attention. The gentle female voice sounded again. Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he listened attentively. This assessment will be carried out together with 380 ancient warrior students. You can get a medal if you kill any opponent, but you will lose your own medal if you die. The top 100 genetic warrior students with the same number of medals will advance to the next round. The ones with the same number of medals will have the priority. 5 medals, third-class welfare. 10 medals, second-class welfare. 20 medals, first-class welfare. 50 medals, special-class welfare. Among them, any form of death will be considered a normal elimination. The test has officially begun. The time limit is 2 hours. World War Control Room. Yujia, is this really okay? The technician turned around and asked worriedly. It's fine. Moon Ming rested her chin on her hand, showing off her sexy body. Ling is a mid-level genetic warrior, but she doesn't have Geno armor or boots. She's as strong as a mid-level elemental B soldier. That's one more variable in the exam. In the real wilderness, there's no lack of high-level elemental B soldiers. Since it's a survival assessment, we'll have to face all kinds of situations. I believe that the outstanding students will get enough medals before they meet Ling. And sometimes it's not necessarily a bad thing to give them a little setback. Moon Ming's beautiful eyes flashed, and the image of the conceited young man appeared in her mind. She smiled slightly. Instead, she hoped that Ling could find that student and take him down a notch. Being too conceited was not a good thing. I wonder who will get the most medals, Zhong Kuei or Ling Yun. I'm afraid only the two of them have the chance to get more than 20 medals, but only if don't meet Ling, compete with the ancient warrior students. Lin Feng tightened his grip on the laser knife in his right hand. On the subway, he had the urge to participate in the ancient warrior assessment. That was the real competition and challenge. He did not expect to get what he wanted in the end. Although there were only 380 ancient warrior students, each of them had gone through many rounds of screening and were the remaining elite ancient warrior students. Since I'm walking the path of an ancient warrior, and I'm about to break through the critical line, this is a good opportunity. A face-to-face battle can let me better understand the ancient warriors. Lin Feng's eyes were bright, and his heart was filled with excitement. He longed for a challenge and the feeling of fighting with the strong. According to Big Brother, this was a real strong person. 380 ancient warrior students, plus more than 200 gene warrior students. In other words, there are nearly 600 medals. Lin Feng calculated in his heart. In the end, there will be 100 ancient warriors and 100 gene warriors who will advance. Simple calculation, there will be an average of 3 medals per person. Some of them will get more than 3 medals, and many of them will be killed after getting 1 or 2 medals. So, the chances of advancing with 2 medals are already very high, and the probability of advancing with 3 medals is 100%. Lin Feng quickly figured out the rules. As Yang Li said, Lin Feng had always been meticulous. 3 medals. If I get 3 medals, I can steadily advance. The rest of the time, I can either find a strong opponent to fight or challenge the beginner elemental B soldier. Lin Feng was not interested in accumulating medals and getting better benefits. If he was determined to obtain medals, it wouldn't be a big problem for him to accumulate 20 medals within 2 hours. However, it was basically impossible for him to obtain 50 medals. Just the consumption of genetic energy was a huge obstacle, and the longer he delayed, the fewer students would be left alive. In contrast, Lin Feng was more interested in challenging strong opponents. World War Control Room. Clack, clack. The sound of keyboards and buttons came one after another, and the technicians were working skillfully. Each of them had a mind expanse of more than 10%, and they were much smarter than ordinary people. Ling Yun, the first to advance. The second and third are out, and they are all ancient warriors. The clear voice kept ringing. Yu Meng crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her voluptuous figure made people want to vomit blood. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at the screen, glancing at the top from time to time, where the number of medals was clearly recorded. Ling Yun, Ancient Warrior, 6 medals. Zhong Kuei, Ancient Warrior, 5 medals. Li Ruoxin, Ancient Warrior, 4 medals. There were already 6 people on the list, and all of them were Ancient Warriors. Except for Ling Yun and Zhong Kuei, the rest had 4 medals. Just as Lin Feng had predicted, one of the unspoken rules of the assessment was that if you obtained 3 medals, you would have a 100% chance of advancing. There is no Gene Warrior yet, but there are countless who have been killed by Ancient Warriors. Yu Meng was not surprised. Everyone knew that Geno warriors who had not fused with the elemental heart were not as strong as Ancient Warriors. Furthermore, among the students that Zhangjin College had recruited over the years, the average quality of Ancient Warriors was 1 level higher than Geno Warriors. If you are lucky, there should be a few Gene Warriors who will obtain 5 medals in the end. But to obtain 10 medals and get second-class benefits, Yu Meng smiled faintly, glancing at the screen on the left and frowning slightly. It was a girl who was injured. Her hand was covering her wound, and her face was pale as she looked at a young man. However, the young man only glanced at her and left as if he did not see her. It's him again. Yu Meng remembered Lin Feng clearly. So arrogant, but he has some manliness. Yu Meng nodded and suddenly said, Lan Yin, what is the name of the young man at the coordinates? What is his current score? Coordinates. Lan Yin's hands were as fast as lightning as she answered quickly. Number 320, Gene Warrior, Lin Feng. Currently, he has 3 medals. Oh, Yu Meng's eyes lit up slightly. Wow, Yujia, this Lin Feng is amazing. Lan Yin's face changed as she exclaimed. However, Yu Meng's attention was focused on the screen at the bottom of the left. 2 young men were standing opposite each other. One of them was Lin Feng, and the other was the person who ranked first in the medal rankings. Ancient Warrior, Ling Yun.